Interesting.
So people think
All right, let's get this
a
show
lot
on the
of people
road.
also, Charles, I'm just going to say that the people who have a lot of money, they're the problem actually, because they think that money can buy their freedom too, and it can't. We have to fight for our freedom.
Agree. Okay, everybody, welcome to today's discussion. Medical Doctors for COVID Ethics International. This group was founded by Dr. Stephen Frost 3 years ago with a desire to pursue truth, ethics, justice, freedom, and health. Stephen stood up against government and power over the years and been a whistleblower and activist. His medical specialty is radiology. We comprise lots of professions here, and we're from all around the world. Many of us thought the vaccines were okay. Now, many of us proudly say, yes, we are passionate anti-vaxxers, and I'm certainly one of them. If this is your first time here, welcome, and feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and where you're from. If you publish a newsletter or a podcast, put it in the chat so we can find you and promote you. Most of us understand we're in the middle of World War III and that the medical science battle is only one of 12 battlefields. Most of us understand the development of science and that the science is never settled. This meeting runs for 2.5 hours, after which, for those with the time, Tom Rodman runs a video telegram meeting. Tom puts the links into the chat if you're able to join. We'll listen to our guest presenter today, Jacqui Deevoy. For as long as Jacqui wishes to speak, then we have Q&A. Stephen Frost, via long-established tradition, asks the first series of questions for 15 minutes. If you're offended by anything, be offended. We are lovingly not interested. We reject the offence industry that requires nobody to say anything that may offend another. We come with an attitude and perspective of love, not fear. Fear is the opposite of love. Fear squashes you. Love, on the other hand, expands you. If you have a solution or a product or links or resources that will help people, put the details into the chat. The meeting is recorded and is uploaded onto the Rumble channel. And now, welcome to our guest presenter, Jacqui Deevoy. And we thank you so much, Jacqui, for giving us your time. And let me say a few words about Jacqui, who has been a full-time freelance journalist for more than 3 decades. Over the last few years, Jacqui's lost faith in the mainstream media and now prefers to work for news outlets that deal in truth, not lies. In 2021, she launched an investigation into euthanasia in the NHS, and that's the National Health Service for those who don't know, in the UK system. And this resulted in Jacqui producing the shocking documentary A Good Death, with Iconic Media. And Iconic Media is founded by David Icke in the UK. Her second film, Playing God, was released just last month. Since 2022, she's produced and presented the UNN Friday Night Show, a sometimes serious but often irreverent chat fest with an array of fascinating guests talking on a wide range of subjects. She's also one of UNN's lead reporters. So, Jacqui, welcome. And again, thank you, Stephen Frost, for creating this group and for organising Jacqui to speak to us today. Jacqui, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me this evening. I haven't actually organised any kind of presentation as such. I was only invited yesterday, and as I said, I've not been feeling that great. But I'm happy to talk about the work that I've done. Yeah, I've been a freelance journalist for almost 40 years, actually, but I always put over 3 decades because it makes me sound a little bit younger. But 39 years I've been actually working now as a freelance journalist full time. And I've seen a lot of changes in that time, as you can imagine. I got into making films just kind of on the off chance, really, because back in 2020, I discovered that people were being killed in NHS settings, NHS hospitals, hospices, and care homes. And it started when one man came to me with the story of his loved one being murdered in one such setting. And I believed him because he was very convincing, but he also brought with him a big file of incontrovertible evidence that his loved one had been actually murdered by nurses in the hospital. Sorry, it wasn't a hospital. Let's just say it was an NHS setting. And he's actually involved in a court case for the last few years. Hopefully it's going to come to some conclusion soon, because it's very exhausting for him and also quite traumatic for everyone involved. So that's going on in the background. There are a few people who are taking nurses, doctors, hospitals to court, but it's very quiet in the background, very slow process. These things can take 10, 20, 30 years, as we all know. And yeah, so he came to me. I started talking about it on various shows. I think I was first on David Icke's podcast, talking to him about the euthanasia of the elderly in care homes and hospitals. Had started. It's been going on for decades, as we know. We had the Liverpool Care Pathway back in, which was abolished back in 2014 for being barbaric and inhumane. We all know about that. It was stealthily brought back in 2020 under the guise of a nice guideline, NG163, which was supposed to be a COVID treatment sort of guideline. When you examined it, it was pretty much identical to the Liverpool Care Pathway, where they used dehydration, starvation, withdrawal of essential medications, and the use of end-of-life medications, not on people who are end-of-life in this instance, but on people who came in presenting with respiratory issues to care homes and hospitals and hospices. There were many of them were immediately put on this protocol and were killed as a result. The more I spoke about it, the more people started coming to me. I set up a support group and started going to the newspapers in the UK, telling them that this was going on and it needs to be, I need some help with investigating it. I'm just one person on my own. And they weren't interested at all. I did manage to get meetings with a few of them, face-to-face meetings with the news editor at the Daily Mail and with the health editor, medical editor at Mail on Sunday. I met them in person. They were absolutely gobsmacked when they saw the evidence. I brought the original guy with me as well, with his big file of evidence. They looked through it all. The meetings were long. They were horrified. They said, this is massive. It's the biggest story of the century. This needs to be front page news, headlines, blah, blah, blah. And then they went back to their offices. We had to exchange a few emails after that, and then I never heard from them again. So there was something strange going on. I've since pitched it to maybe over 100 editors and staff reporters on newspapers and magazines, and none of them are interested at all. So I started to think there's some kind of D-notice or something put on it that's stopping this being reported. This was back in early 2021. So every couple of months I pitch it again, and now it's just tumbleweed, unless there's a new person in the office, and sometimes they accidentally reply and say, oh, this sounds interesting, tell me more. And then I tell them more, and then I never hear from them again either. So it's like they obviously get a slap on the wrists when they go to their seniors and told, what are you doing talking to this person? I don't know. I can only imagine what goes on behind the scenes in those offices. But yeah, I don't get any interest. I think I'm slightly blacklisted now. I can go to them about any other story, and they reply. But if and then I say, and what about the euthanasia story? Silence again. So it's all been very peculiar and not like anything else I've ever experienced in that 39 years of working as a freelancer. So Jamie Icke, who runs Iconic, got in touch with me in mid-2021 and heard that I was struggling to get this story out there. So he said, do you want to make a documentary about it? So I jumped at the chance, and we made it in 3 months. And we've got it out there in December 2021. So it's been out for a long time now, and lots of people have seen it. I don't know how many. I think it's one of Iconic's most watched documentaries, but I know people all over the world have seen it. So maybe it goes into the millions. But it's one of those documentaries, when you hear about it, you just think, oh, that sounds absolutely ridiculous, But when you watch it, nearly everyone has the same reaction. Nearly everyone says, oh, I think that might have happened to my mum, dad, brother, sister, uncle, It does resonate with most people when you hear these people's stories. So it's like they're clearly not lying. I only had one criticism of it in all this time, and that was a drunk woman, I think. And she said, oh, they're all actors and you wrote a script. Well, if that's the case, we should all win Oscars because, they're clearly the best actors in the world. These people, I didn't have to prep them in any way. I just went to their houses, interviewed them. They all said so many similar things that it was really easy to put the film into categories, because they were all saying the same things, which was quite shocking, very specific things, about the medics, the nurses and doctors being cold and robotic and not maintaining any eye contact and just treating them really poorly and even being cruel and sadistic sometimes. They're all saying that. They're all saying they thought it was all about the money. There were so many similarities in their stories, and these were people from all over the UK saying the same things who had never met each other. So that was really interesting. So and I also thought after it was made and put out there, I just thought, we're going to be sued. They're going to try and sue us. The NHS, we're saying the NHS are killing people. They're obviously going to not like that very much. And nothing happened. So I don't know. It's quite weird. Most of the people involved and most of the people I've spoken to since would love the NHS to try and sue them, because that would give them the opportunity to stand up in court and tell their story. So yeah, since then, my support group, I've got 140 people in it now. I've spoken to hundreds more, but not everyone wants to be in a group. But in the support group are people all having gone through similar experiences with their loved ones being murdered in NHS facilities. And don't know, that one story is worse than the other. I don't know which. I can recount, the woman whose 54-year-old husband was murdered in front of her. That was pretty horrendous. The woman whose husband died, she was bereaved. She went to hospital because she wasn't feeling very well, just general malaise. She was bereaved, basically. She was suffering from grief, and they killed her, though she had no health issues at all before she went into hospital. The stories are just so horrendous, you wouldn't believe. A couple of years went by, and I thought in 2022, I need to make another film, because people were coming to me with stories that basically amounted to what we were hearing about then was democide. So people being killed under government policies and protocols for a whole variety of reasons, people being used in drug trials without their permission, without their family knowing, malpractice, negligence. We had more euthanasia stories coming, jab death stories. So I kind of put them all under the umbrella of medical democide in the UK. So my second film, which was released last month, is called Playing God, and it's about medical democide in the UK over the last 50 years. Again, giving a platform to people who need to tell their stories. One story is almost 50 years old. A woman called Joan, whose 12-year-old daughter, was killed in a drug trial. Her story is absolutely horrendous. She's been fighting for justice ever since that happened in 1978. Joan is now 90, and she has not stopped. Her husband has died in the process. The whole story is horrendous, but they had 5 funerals for Eleanor, Joan's daughter, because her body parts were found in 5 different locations. It's just the most horrendous story. She had no idea that her child was being used in this way and was killed because of it. And I think what's special about the Playing God film is that we actually just interviewed the people separately, and we just let them tell the story. And sometimes they cry, there's real sort of raw human emotion. When they start crying, rather than in like a mainstream documentary, they'd clip it and move on to the next bit. We just sat with them and let them sort of express their emotions. So it's quite a hard watch, but most people, I haven't had any bad words said about that either. But apart from the fact that it is difficult to watch and very, very upsetting, no one has accused me of making anything up or it being scripted, because it's clearly not. So you can find that. I can put the links up at some point to that. I've got a trailer. They showed it on UK Column, because I've been on UK Column a few times over the last few years, and they put it out in America on Children's Health Defence. They've got it on that platform as well in their video section. So it's being seen now by a lot of people, and we're also now trying to set up screenings all over the UK, and we're going to kind of do a YouTube launch as well at some point, if they don't kick us off, because they certainly didn't like A Good Death. I set up, I think Iconic were removed from YouTube. David Icke was removed from YouTube. And when I put up my own YouTube channel and put A Good Death on it, it was shut down immediately. So, but I think Playing God, although it's as controversial as A Good Death, it's kind of a little bit more subtle. It's not as obvious with the title and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of me up to date, skipping out loads and loads of things in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. But yeah, I started off working for teenage and women's magazines, and have gone on from then into more serious areas. And like I said earlier, I'm doing a bit of travel journalism as well, because just for a bit of light relief, because it can be a bit much sometimes. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Very good, Jacqui. Thank you for that and for the overview of your journey. And I remember you speaking to us over 2 years ago. So it's great to have you back. Before Stephen asks the first set of questions, we've got hands up, which is great. I want to bring everyone's attention to the crimes being perpetrated against not just Julian Assange, although his appeal was successful, but Rainer Fulmich. And all of us need to shine a light on what's happening to Rainer for fighting for his freedom and for fighting for what we're on about. Clearly a political show trial. The judge's behaviour is outrageous. I have on excellent authority. I've been talking to his wife, and we need to spread the message. Some lawyers say, oh, no, don't make a fuss. Yes, we have to make a fuss. And Jerome Corsi, I totally agree with you that when there's a show trial on, you need to make a fuss. You don't sit around quietly and ignore and let the government do what it does. But the judge who is handling the Fulmich trial is clearly corrupt, and we have to call it out. So, Jerome, we're following your lead in the journey that you've expressed to us. So, Stephen, first sort of questions to you.
Jacqui, that was just a brilliant summary of, I don't know, I get the impression that you don't. So I am a doctor, you're a journalist. I get the impression that you don't fully realize, or maybe you're trying to sound reasonable, I don't know, the importance of what you're talking about. I mean, it's just so important, this. And the fact that they don't want the story out, it is confirmation of that, you know, and that you went to the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. I know these papers because I was in dealing with them with the David Kelly death, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm really shocked. My mother was killed in a local hospital in North Wales in 2016. Oh, and so I understood what was going on in 2020 straight away. And so the Liverpool care pathway you talked about, I don't know how to do justice to what you've just said. It's just so shocking, and I'm so exercised by it that I'm having difficulty getting my thoughts together. But anyway, I don't know what do the Daily Mail and the you know, these papers were instrumental in getting the story out about David Kelly. People said to me later, "You never got an inquest." No, but we changed public opinion. We didn't need an inquest in the end. And everybody thought that David Kelly had committed suicide. And now they think, the ones who can remember David Kelly, or they say straight away to me, they don't know who I am. I just say, "What do you think about David Kelly?" And they say, "Oh, he was bumped off." So we changed the narrative as far as the public was concerned. We didn't need an inquest in the end. I don't know what to say about the Liverpool care pathway was outrageous. They then got caught out with that and took it away. But actually, the do not resuscitate notices were the replacement, and they were in operation for my mother's death in 2016. So my mother, and I'd like to send you a report I wrote to the coroner at the time, 5 days before my final trial with the MOD, outrageous, in a whistleblowing case when I didn't even know what a whistleblower was. And I provided 5 days before the final hearing, being threatened virtually by my own lawyers that I had to go to court, even though my mother had been killed in the local hospital. I didn't fully realize what had gone on then, because I didn't know then that the consultant who I'd spoken to, and she had tried to get my permission to put this do not resuscitate notice on my mother. The consultant challenged me over the phone. I never met her. She was trying to push for a do not, I said, under no circumstances are you to put a do not resuscitate notice on my mother. And she was kind of taunting me and saying, "I can overrule you." I said, "Try it." She knew I was a doctor. And I said, intended to sound a bit threatening because it was my mother. I said, try it and see what happens. So it turned out when my mother did die, I was in contact with the coroner and evidence was supplied to him. I wrote this report, which I read now and I wonder how on earth I wrote it. It's even though I say it myself, it's a brilliant report. It's brilliant. I sent it to my MP recently and he said, Stephen, do you want me to follow this up? I said, well, I need to think about when I'm kind of fit to take it on, I want to, if I do put it to him, then I will follow it through. And that means maybe 5 years work. So anyway, the point is that I found out after she died that the do not resuscitate notice had been put on my mother without anybody's consent, despite my protestation, me saying to the consultant, try it, don't do it. And then when I brought it up with the coroner, he said he took the opportunity when I was away in Sweden for, I think, 3 weeks to close my mother's case and come to the cause of death, which I told him straight away was the wrong cause of death. And he chose to ignore the consultant's evidence. And I told him, she's lied to you. My evidence that she had lied. I knew that I had nothing to fear because I was telling the truth. And but the coroner then was taunting me and saying, try challenging my decision. I said, I know all about that from the David Kelly. I hadn't previously said anything about David Kelly. From the David Kelly case, I'd have to go to the Supreme Court. That's through 3 courts, High Court, Appeal Court, Supreme Court, twice to overrule the coroner's decision. That's what they did with Kelly's death. We didn't need the inquest in the end. But my mother, yeah, I realized I couldn't take that on at the same time as I was trying to recover from the MOD case. So anyway, I hope I'm making sense. I think the titles are absolutely brilliant, Jacqui. A Good Death is just brilliant. And the other one, Playing God, that's exactly what's wrong with the world at the moment. Everybody thinks they know everything and they know nothing. They have no wisdom, and they have. So it seems to me that there's human hubris everywhere, and people are playing God. They think they know. So people like Elon Musk putting it about that he's going to other planets and or going to a space station, so endless weightlessness. Well, good luck with that. You'll have no muscles after 12 months. And also, if you're going to another planet, you're going to have to go a damn long way to get to the next planet. 4 light years is the next solar system. Mars is in our solar system. It's too cold. Venus is too hot. Space station, you can't have that. You can't have weightlessness forever. You have no muscles, and then you can't move. So I think Playing God is a brilliant title. I'd like to work with you. I'd like to supply you this coroner's report, and thank you so much for speaking out. I don't think maybe you do understand how important it is, but I just get the impression that maybe you're just trying to be reasonable. I don't. I'd like to work with you anyway.
I do.
Thank you so much.
Firstly, let me say I'm really sorry about your mother. I mean, I realized when I started looking into the first film and started investigating and researching that, it suddenly occurred to me just a few months into it that my mum had been euthanized in 2009. So for your mum to have been killed just in 2016, it must feel like yesterday. I know it still feels like yesterday. My mum was only 68. She had cancer. She was euthanized in a hospice, very much against her will. I just had no idea at the time what they were doing. I sat with her for the 3 days while she was being killed. I did ask them, what's that in her arm? What are you giving her? And I'm just quite interested. They said, oh, it's just some medications to make her more comfortable, which we now know is a euphemism for killing them. And I said, oh, that's nice, and sat there and watched her die, suffocate to death with these end-of-life concoction of drugs. This is the weird thing. The drugs that they were using during the faux pandemic were a combination of benzodiazepines and opioids. So we're looking at mainly midazolam they were using as a benzo, and then they were using morphine mainly, or fentanyl, as an opioid. Everyone knows that these two drugs separately cause depression of respiration, together more so, when used concomitantly.
Exactly. You've got a synergistic effect. Yes.
And if these drugs are given in injections, it's a bit more controllable. But once a syringe driver is in place and the drugs are being pumped continuously into the body, there's only one outcome, and that's death. They knew what they were doing. I don't know if all the nurses knew what they were doing. Whoever put together the policies and the protocols knew exactly what they were doing. In fact, in 2020, when this protocol came to light, NG163, Matt Hancock put the protocol in front of a panel of 9 doctors and 2 professors, including Dr. Sam Amadzi. He's been on a lot of these sort of meetings, Zoom meetings that I've been on as well. They actually said to Matt Hancock that this is a very dangerous protocol. It'll probably kill people. They published a letter in the British Medical Journal, which is still available online if you want to look at it, which says that this protocol should not be used because it's very dangerous and it will likely kill people. Matt Hancock said, thank you very much, and used it anyway. So when people were cottoning on to the NG163 being very similar to the Liverpool, well, almost identical to the Liverpool Care Pathway, they then changed the name of it to NG191. And it became a much bigger document. I think NG163 was about 75 pages or something, 90 pages. And NG161 was more than 400 pages. And the certain words such as midazolam and benzodiazepine and morphine were buried. They weren't as immediate in the policy, in the protocol. If you just took a glance at it, it wasn't on the first page, it was on the 27th page or something. But it was basically the same protocol. Then in November last year, when I was having a nose round, I noticed that it was November the 30th, 2023. I looked up NG191 again to see if anything had been changed, and it had been. And they'd actually removed the use of benzodiazepines and morphine and opioids in that protocol. Now, my question at that time was, well, if they've removed it, why have they removed it?
Exactly.
Yeah, and what about all the people who that policy was used on?
Yes.
Did they realize that this was killing people after 3 years and remove it for that reason, or was there another reason?
No, they knew beforehand. They knew beforehand.
Yeah, of course we know. We put that question to Will Quince, MP, who was Secretary of State at the time. He quickly resigned. Maybe a coincidence, maybe not, and passed it on to someone else. We still haven't got a straight answer from any member of Parliament. We arranged a meeting with Andrew Bridgen last June in the Houses of Parliament. I took 43 families with me, and several members of each family in some cases, and we invited all their MPs as well. And out of the 43 MPs, 2 turned up. Both stayed for 10 minutes at the most. And they're not interested. A lot of these families have been petitioning their MPs, writing to them constantly and just being ignored, often being blocked on social media by the MP, which I think is really bizarre when they do that, and not getting any reply at all. My MP actually turned up, and she has since said if I want to have a face-to-face meeting with her at some point, which I hope to do. But you get to a point with this sort of work, and I know, like you said, it is important, but it's really draining and it's really tiring. And
I understand, yeah.
And
Jacqui,
when you've got,
you're on the right track. So the first judgment of the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, that this was the story of the century. This is the story of the century. That they kill people in hospitals.
We've got the infected.
We need to get it out. And everyone needs to realize that they themselves are at risk if they go to hospital, that all their relatives are, all their friends are. There's nothing more important than people being killed in hospital, where they rely on the trust which the public put in them. It's absolutely outrageous. I really encourage you to pursue this. I understand that it's really wearing, but we will work with you. I really would like to work with you on this. And I'm sure Jerry Waters in Ireland would like to too.
Jerry's great. I'm a big fan of Jerry's, that's for sure. My dad was also killed while I was making the first film. My dad had been in a care home. I managed to get him out of the care home, even though they said I couldn't. I managed to do that and got him home to his house, got him a full-time carer. And he knew I was making the film, A Good Death. I told him all about it. He was only young too. He was only 78. So he wasn't like ancient. He wasn't ill. He was healthy. He was recovering from a minor stroke, but he didn't have any terminal illness. And one day in September, he used to say to me, they're not going to do that to me, are they? And I said, no chance. You've got me on your side. You've got your carer. She's not going to let anyone into the house. There was an incident. They had to call an ambulance. The paramedics came and they killed him in his own bed. So that was on September the 24th, 2021, a year after I got him out of the care home.
How did they do that, Jacqui?
They phoned his GP. My dad's GP wasn't there, and they spoke to another GP who didn't know my dad. The other GP said my dad was end of life. He was receiving palliative care. He had terminal cancer. None of those things were true, but even if they were, that did not give these 3 young paramedics the right to do what they did, which was inject my dad with something that he had a fatal reaction to, then lie that they'd given him anything. I found out later they'd injected him with glycopyrronium bromide, which he obviously had a fatal reaction to. I think it might have been more than that they gave him, but they weren't admitting to that. I went to the police. I reported it as a suspected murder. They pretended to investigate it for 8 months and then just quickly said the case is closed. If I wanted to complain, I needed to go, back to the ambulance service. But I didn't actually have enough evidence. It was their word against mine. But the story that my dad's carer told me, she overheard them talking about midazolam because her ears pricked up because she knew I'd been working on that particular drug, they're writing about it and filming about it, and she was like asking them about it. Did you give him midazolam? They said no. When he was dead in the bed, she actually chased the paramedics back out to the ambulance saying, what did you give him? What did you give him? When I phoned the paramedics, they said, oh, sorry about your dad. And I said, I don't care about that. Just tell me what you gave him. Because I told them on the phone, because I was driving to see him. I'm only about an hour away. And I said, tell him I'm on my way and don't inject him with anything until I get there. And we'll see because he basically had a little bit of a choking fit, and he often used to choke on his breakfast. He eats too fast, but the paramedic said he wouldn't stop kind of coughing, so they called the ambulance. And I said to them, just check his airways, make sure nothing's stuck in his throat, give him a bit of oxygen if necessary. Don't inject him with anything. And the paramedic really didn't like me. He thought I was a real know-it-all. He told that to the carer and to two members of the step family that had turned up at that point. And they said they were going to make a best interest decision. And in their opinion, it was in my dad's best interest to be dead. So that's what they did. They killed him.
Oh, and did you say what was it?
Glycopyrronium, which is the drug that they administer to people to stop the secretions in the throat. They thought he was a bit gargly and he was choking on his own sort of secretions a bit. So they gave him that to stop the secretions, which I thought when they mentioned that drug, it would be something orally, obviously, because it's the throat, but they injected him with it and he was dead about half an hour later. And it was a very unpleasant, undignified death. My dad would have been terrified as well. These strangers in masks and rubber gloves injecting him with God knows what. And
which year was that, Jacqui?
Sorry?
Which year was that?
2021, September the 24th.
Sorry about that.
So it's while I was making the film, I was dealing with that. Well, we were kind of editing at that point, started editing at that point, but it was like, so it's shocking because I'd found out my mum had been euthanized earlier that year, and then promised my dad nothing like that would ever happen to him. And then the exact thing happened to him the minute my back was turned. And this is how they operate. I've spoken to so many.
Sorry, would you like, if you would like, the police didn't investigate a murder. I agree with you that this needed to be investigated.
I've got 140 people with the same story that they've gone to the police.
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got enormous power as the victim. You're a journalist, but you're also a victim. You have huge power with your own story. If you need a doctor to go with you to the police again and say, look, you need to, or I can write to the chief of police wherever it was. I'll do it.
I made a conscious decision. I could either spend the next 10 years of my life trying to fight for justice for my dad, or I could use that little energy that I had to help other people and to make more films, because I couldn't do everything. And I've seen what it's done to people in my group. Some people have been fighting for decades. Political care pathway. Some people have been fighting for the last 6 months or the last 3 months, and that it has a terrible effect on your health and health. people can't sleep, they can't rest, they can't
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
they're exhausted. And I thought, I can't.
Especially when you get caught up in a legal process. So I think the best thing we can do, you and I could do, or people you may like as well, who you can work with, is join the dots and just make it into a story that the public understand. This is outrageous.
I have written this story many, many times for alternative news outlets, but obviously the mainstream media aren't interested, like I said. But I've got 140 people in my support group who would really appreciate your help. The ones who are new to it all are more enthusiastic, obviously. The ones who've been going for years are getting tired and thinking this isn't going anywhere. I've got a lady called Barbara whose husband was murdered in hospital in 2014. They put him on the Liverpool care pathway. The first thing they said to her when he died, within a minute of him taking his last breath, was, "He has lovely skin, can we take it?" And she couldn't believe her ears. And she said, what do you mean? And they said, for transplants and stuff, he's got really nice skin, we could use that. This was
that sounds like a psychopath.
Well, this is the other thing. Most of the people that it seems that they've been employing, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, they seem to be not like your average nurse and doctor, who are doing the job because they have a vocation to help people. These people, I'm starting to think they've been brought in from elsewhere. They're mercenaries. They're hired assassins. The way that they've been described, some don't identify themselves, many don't have name badges on or anything like that. They don't look you in the eye. They ignore you when you ask a question. They just walk away when you're trying to talk to them. They are hired, I believe, and it sounds really sinister and real conspiracy theory stuff, but it's starting to look like these people, because when they've been tried, a lot of them, when they've been when the victims' families have tried to trace them, then they can't find them. So, and they don't know their names, and they sign the forms in squiggles, and you can't identify what the signatures.
So the paramedic who killed your father, the one who was leading that operation, if you like, he sounds like that, And
he sounded like real psychopath. Yeah, he was very psychopathic. He actually came off the phone to me and said to the carer and the step family, "Oh, she sounds like a right know-it-all. Who does she think she is?" She said she's got power of attorney, which I had. I had power of attorney for my dad's health and well-being, and also for his finances. He said, "I don't believe her." The step family, who aren't very keen on me, said, "Yeah, she's a bit like that. We don't believe her either." He said, "So because of that, I'm going to make a best interest decision." This guy, my dad's carer, said was about 26 years old.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't link things. You can't say that he's saying he doesn't like you because you've got too much to say for yourself. He cannot then use that to justify his best interest decision when he's only a paramedic. They think they're wonderful, these paramedics. They're not doctors. And
the girl well, funnily enough, one of my dad's favorite jokes was, "What's the difference between God and a doctor?" And the answer is, God doesn't think he's a doctor. So that kind of was stuck in my head when I was making Playing God as well. I wanted to actually include that joke somewhere, but it didn't seem to fit in anywhere. But that was one. I mean, he was a bit of a joker, my dad. I've written about my dad in the story, and it's been published. But again, mainstream media aren't interested. I send it to them, and I'm just met with silence. So yeah, the girl who administered the fatal shot to my dad was 21 years old. Her name was Hannah Russell. I looked her up on. She was a senior paramedic. I looked her up on Twitter and saw her there. She's not on Twitter anymore. Didn't say anything, obviously. I thought I'll let the police deal with it all, and they weren't interested either. But they did. When they said, we're closing the investigation, I said, "Well, you haven't done an investigation. You haven't done any investigating at all."
Exactly.
They said, "We've spoken to everyone involved, and everyone said it was fine, nothing to see. They did their best, and." So when I said, I spoke to my dad's GP about after the weekend he died, a few days later, and she was in shock. And I said, "What happened to my dad?" And she said, "I don't know. I'm really shocked. I'm really sorry." And I said, "Well, what do you think happened?" She said, "I've no idea. He was fine, I said, "He was alive one day and dead the next. What's that all about?"
Yeah, exactly. Outrageous. So you said about the senior paramedic, I think. Well, did you say that senior paramedic was only 21 years old?
Yeah, she was called something like, I might not got this right, advanced paramedic or senior paramedic, something like that. And she was 21, yeah, at the
But you
time.
can't be senior. You can't be a senior anything when you're 21 years old.
I remember thinking that at the time, thinking that's
It's an
a strange time.
oxymoron. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jacqui. Thank you,
So,
and great that you have the courage to do this. And sorry, Charles, are you there? Charles, are you? Okay. So Mark Dyer.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, Jacqui. Very sorry to hear about your parents.
thank you.
I'm working with Amanda Hunter.
Yeah, I
Are
know
you in
Amanda.
touch with Amanda?
Yeah, I invited Amanda into my group, I think, a couple of years ago, and she's been fantastic, obviously doing what she's doing, kind of working in parallel, really. I've met her several times and we've been on like this together. And she's absolutely brilliant. And she's at the moment collating lots of stories from people in our group, because it's a huge job and she's doing brilliantly. So yeah, I know her.
Okay. I have volunteered on her group. I'm the kind of like librarian.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right, there's loads. I mean, I've only just started it. I cannot believe how much information and all the links that have been sent to me. It's a huge task, right? So anyway, thank you very much for everything that you've done, and I hope to see that film shortly.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
And Peter Underwood is in South Africa, and Peter's a very optimistic guy. He said on this call that South Africa is safe when we know it isn't, but Peter thinks it's safe. So,
thank you, Stephen. Well, it's safe where I am on a mountain in Simonstown, so I feel pretty safe here. But you're quite right. Generally speaking, it's a bit of a war zone. But I wanted to ask Jacqui whether she knew about the today's result of the inquiry on the 50-year blood contamination. I've put it in the chat. Something is very rotten at the heart of the British state. I put a short video, only 2 minutes, on the chairman who came out with the most appalling results of this 50-year killing of people with contaminated blood. Did you know about that today? It's pretty hot off the press.
Yes, I have heard about it, but I haven't had a chance to look into it yet. So yeah, but like I was about to say earlier, these scandals, we've got the infected blood scandal, we've got the post office scandal, we've got the jab scandal, people dropping dead from the toxic mRNA injections, and we've got the euthanasia scandal. These things take years. I mean, that's 50 years, post office scandal, 30 years, these things take years. And that's the other reason why I thought I cannot enter into that process for myself and for my dad personally. Also, I had a dream about my dad and he told me to just leave it. And I just thought, actually, do you know what? I think I might have to, dealing with his personal thing. So, and I, like I said earlier, I've already seen people really, really suffering ill health and stuff because they've been spending 24 hours a day on trying to get justice, for their loved ones. And and I just thought, I'm not going to be any use to anyone if I get like that. So, yeah, I have heard about that today, but I haven't managed to look into it in any detail. But the one thing that did leap out at me was the fact that it had taken so long to come to most people's attention. And this is the way it goes. Then they hope people will just forget about it. And sadly, people do. Yeah. What they hope in the process of all this legal stuff and over all these decades is that people will get tired, that people will run out of money, like most people do, because the people they're fighting seem to have a bottomless pit of funds, whereas your average person in the street does not. Or they hope that you'll die. Some people do, and then that's the end of that, and it's all gone away. And they will just drag it out for as long as possible until one of those three events occur. And that's one of the reasons they deliberately take so long. I think they want the person or the people who are bringing it to the public's attention to just stop, and invariably they do because they can't go on.
Yeah, you're so right, Jackie. The British system is very obtuse and very complex, and it has a system. And what it does is it sets up an inquiry. Think about the Irish problem where people were killed in those days, going back 50 odd years or more. And then you look at Hillsborough, or you
Well,
look
actually,
at
that was Peter. That was one instance where the inquiry got it right, amazingly, but probably it was a lot worse than the inquiry said. So it was a limited hangout. That was the Bloody Sunday inquiry, the Savile inquiry.
That's very true, Simon. But the principle that the Brits use, and don't forget they've been at it for 1,000 years or more, they're very good at setting up a royal commission or an inquiry of some sort or another and drawing it out over so many years. By the time they come to a conclusion, most of the people, the culprits, are dead or so infirm they're not even considered. And this is how the system works.
Yes, you
and
said that they're very good, Peter. I would suggest you use the word very evil. They're not very good.
I'll go along with that, Simon.
They're very good at evil, yes.
No, you're quite right, Simon. You're quite right, Stephen, to correct me. But I write about this every week. I was incorporated into the War Office when I was very young in the 1960s. I saw from the inside the way the system worked. I was with SHAPE, Strategic Headquarters Allied Powers Europe in 1963-4, and I realized straight away, within 6 months, there was something very rotten at the heart of the British system. And I've spent my life publishing the situation. I'm on Substack, and I put in a link in the chat to the Burning Platform, where I publish all my articles twice a week. So if people want to look at what really is happening in Britain, they can do so by looking at my writing.
Yeah, I think Charles has fallen asleep in Australia. Anyway, so now we've got Jerry. Jerry was taken out in Ireland, Jacqui. Oh, you know him, yes. So go ahead, Jerry.
Hi, Jacqui. At the start, I want to apologise to you. The last time we chatted, we were talking about me going over to the premiere of your film, the launch of it, and we chatted away. And I was thinking, yeah, I'll go over to that, and then I fell asleep. And a couple of days later, I woke, and it was the 21st or the 22nd. I think, oh shit, I've missed that. So I want to apologise. I don't know if you were expecting me to go over or not, but no. I had intended. And with the election, with this bloody European election, my life is in. I'm in a dishwasher, or rather a tumble dryer. There's so many things. It's such a huge constituency. That is an excuse, I know, and I'm sorry for missing your premiere.
No, that's absolutely fine. The premiere was amazing. It was completely full house. Lots of chat afterwards. It was a really good event. It was in central London in a hotel called Carmen Sanctum. We're doing another one though, Jerry, on the 7th of June. So if you want to come over for that, but it is a long trek just for a couple of hours to see a film. Do you know what I mean? You can see it online.
Yeah. It's nice to think that I probably wouldn't have got in anyway if it was booked out. Sorry. Who exactly are you? You say you know Jacqui? Yeah. Loads of guys come up here saying they know Jacqui. You know. The other thing, just talking about playing God and being a GP for 47 years, we do play God, and you know that's the reality. Somewhere along the way, somebody has to make the decision. I've been involved in those decisions on many occasions, and in nursing homes and hospice, but I can't say with absolute certainty I never ever made a decision like that with anybody who had more than a few hours or a few days to live. And I have been involved with end of care, end of life care, and that. But I can categorically state that never, ever, ever did I come close to making a decision with somebody who had any more than a day or so to live with absolute
Yeah,
certainty, terminal cancer. So to an extent, yes, we do play God. And, unfortunately, somebody has to be kind of trained along that road. And those decisions do have to be made at stages. But the point is, they don't play God. They play evil. They play Satan. That's what's happened. It isn't that they're playing God. There's absolutely no decency, no goodness, no humanity. Quite apart from the religious aspect, there's no humanity in these people, and that is where, in effect, the medical profession have gone totally, absolutely off rails. I don't recognize it anymore. I genuinely do not recognize the profession that I practiced for 47 years.
Well, it's not just doctors playing God. We had, of course, Matt Hancock saying at the COVID inquiry that he wanted to be able to decide who lived and died. He actually said that. I was actually in a courtroom with Matt Hancock, coincidentally, in November, and that wasn't a pleasant experience. I wasn't dealing directly with him, but he was standing just about, I don't know, 10 yards away from me. And that was pretty horrible. I did catch his eye a few times. He exists. He's a demon. He's a liar. He's a really unpleasant aura to him. Him and the judge were in collusion in this particular case. He won, of course. We knew he would. And the judge told us not to look at him, not to make any faces, to have complete poker faces during the court case. And I had to put my sunglasses on so I could make faces behind the sunglasses without him seeing, because you cannot be in the same room as that demon and not show some kind of disapproval at the very least. But so it's not just doctors that are playing God. And I believe nobody has the right, doctors, MPs, no one has the right to decide whether someone should live or die. We get a lot of people saying stuff like, oh, well, very, very old people, terminally ill people, we all know they get a helping hand at the end. A bit of midazolam, a bit of morphine to finish them off. It's a mercy killing. It doesn't matter whether you think that's a good or right thing. In the UK, it's illegal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you are
absolutely, Jacqui.
murder, and you get the same punishment for involuntary euthanasia, for committing involuntary euthanasia on someone else. You get the same sentence as you would for murder. So involuntary euthanasia, I don't know why that phrase exists, because it is
there's no such term as involuntary euthanasia in effect. It's an oxymoron.
Yes.
It's murder if it's involuntary euthanasia.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the getting back, you were talking there about the advanced paramedics. That's what they're called, the advanced paramedics. And I got to admit, they can be an awful headache. I've been in situations where I worked in general surgery. I trained in general surgery, so in effect, I wasn't first aid. I wasn't second aid. I was third aid. I was the guy that took these patients in and did 4-quadrant taps on their abdomens to find out if they were bleeding, and I amputated legs and bits and pieces like that. Oftentimes the right leg, the wrong leg, but as I say, I was very highly trained in general surgery, and I've had advanced paramedics push me out of the way at road traffic accidents, and kind of, or not so much order me away as they wouldn't do it, but you were pushed out of the way, and you kind of think, I can do some good here. I've always stopped at road traffic accidents because of my temperament and my training. But I've had advanced paramedics. Now, when you talk about advanced paramedics, these people do courses. So you do these sort of 3 months courses, and they manage to do a couple of these, and that turns them from a paramedic to an advanced paramedic.
Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous to give someone that power.
Yeah.
This girl was younger than all my children, mashallah.
Yeah. Well, that makes them all the more arrogant and know all. You oftentimes, the younger you are, the more you know. The other thing, if I go to Europe, Jacqui, there's one conundrum and one problem I have: the salary. I've no idea what the salary of an MEP is, but I don't want it. And I do know if I went there and if I got there, I intend to use my salary to finance films like yours. So if I get there, we'll be talking about using my salary. I don't need a salary. I can live on the pensions I have. I really. So what I'm saying is, if and when I get there, we will be talking about making another film. Okay,
Definitely.
that's a promise.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jared. There is definitely room for another film. As soon as A Good Death was finished, I thought we need a part two. Maybe a part three and part four, because more and more people are coming to me, and like I said, each story was more horrific than the last. And they need to be heard. I did promise to everyone in the group I'll get their story out one way or another, whether it's in a book, a magazine article, a newspaper article, on an alternative media news outlet, or in a film, or even a small video.
And how much does it cost, Jacqui? How much would a film like that cost?
Playing God, I raised the money for it all by myself with a crowdfunder. It took us 18 months to raise almost 20,000. So, and we've got about 1,000 or so of that left. So, we're looking at around 20.
That's not a lot of money. I've got a kind of habit. I rather like giving away money.
Yeah, but that's not really paying anyone very much, and I didn't pay myself till the very end to see what was left over. So obviously I paid the directors for the filming and all the work that they've done, and the editors and but me and the other producer didn't really pay ourselves that much, and not till the very end, because I just wanted to get it out there. So it's not been, ideally it'll be more than that, but
yeah. But the point about it is, Jacqui, this story, this horrific event in history is so big that if you had money and you're holding on to it, it's of little relevance to you, because the WHO are going to come back and kill us all off anyway. So the idea of trying to hang on to your few pennies seems to me quite ridiculous. And I'm a firm believer in obviously you can't leave your family destitute, but at the same token, if you really understand what's going on, I think it's important to put everything you can into it.
Well, I was actually in this time just a few months ago on the verge of getting my flat repossessed, and so I'm having to sell that. I'm being forced into selling that, but that's fine. It's not the end of the world. I've had it for a while. I can do with a change of selling it. It's fine. So but it's not an ideal situation, but that is as a result of putting all my energies into doing this and not getting any paid work anymore from the mainstream media. Back in 2020, the first story I took to the mainstream media was about DNRs, when I discovered that my dad had a DNR put on him without my or his permission. And so the Telegraph liked that idea and commissioned me to write it. I wrote it, and then they went quiet. And then after a few weeks, I asked them when were they going to run it, and they said they'd decided they weren't going to run it, but they wouldn't tell me why. And then I got that story published by an alternative news outlet, which obviously doesn't have a bigger sort of audience. But because really, I don't really like writing for the mainstream anymore, but it's the only way to get the information out to the people who need to hear it, the people who don't know about it. Because they're like, oh, if it's on the telly or if it's in the papers, then they'll believe it. They're not going to believe it if it's on some alternative news website, sadly.
Yeah.
My
Jacqui, can you put the link to that article you just talked about now? Can you put it in the chat and send it to me as well?
Yeah, can I do it afterwards? I'll probably shut everything down. I'm not very good at technology, and I have to find the link. I've got it in my files on my phone, but I'll have a look while we're chatting. But if I can, I'll give it a go. I've got a link to films as well.
So afterwards, if you could send a copy of that article to me and maybe to Jerry too, and whoever else is on the call who wants it.
Yeah, I post it regularly on Twitter every so often. The articles I initially wrote back in 2020 that never got published by the mainstream. There's a lot of those. I mean, I was even, when I was going to the protests, I was writing the articles while I was there, sending them into like Mail Online or whatever, and they're like, it's okay, we've got our guy here. And I'm like, yeah, I can see him. He's the one at the front with a mask, at the protests. And they stood out like sore thumbs, the mainstream reporters. When I actually had a meeting with a guy from the Daily Mail back in 2021, he turned up with a mask on, rubber gloves on, his little suit and tie, and he sat down. We're meeting outside as well at the time, outside a restaurant. And when he sat down, I said to him, "Are you actually scared of this, virus?" And he said, "Not now, I've had my jabs." And I was like, oh my God. When I was talking to him, I said to him, "You know how everyone hates Matt Hancock?" And he said, "Do they?" And I'm like, hang on, this is the news editor of a national newspaper. And I said, "Yeah, everyone hates Matt Hancock. It's a known fact." And he said, "Well, I've never heard that." So they're living in some kind of weird bubble, these people. It's quite alarming and quite worrying to know that they're kind of semi-controlling what goes into the newspapers. But anyway, it turns out he didn't have any control at all, because his interest just gradually waned over the next few weeks, and I never heard from him again. So with no real explanation. The other guy from the Mail on Sunday, I don't think he even works in journalism anymore, but I did pursue him for a few months, and he did talk to a couple of people from my support group, and he just came back and said, "Oh, there's not enough evidence." People from the Telegraph, editors from the Telegraph said, "Yeah, tell us when someone wins a case, then we'll be interested in talking about it." But until then,
they're completely lost, aren't they? And it's their duty to inform the public, and they don't even know. Well, do they? I think they do know more than they. I told the guy at the Times, the news editor of the Times, I think it was, certainly a senior editor at the Times of London. I was asking him why they couldn't publish Archbishop Vigano's statement. That's right. I said, "You can't say it's not newsworthy if it's come from Archbishop Vigano." He was. I said, and he said, I said, "Would you like me to send it to you?" He said, "No. We won't publish it." I said, "Well, you haven't read it, so how do you know?" And so in the end, in desperation, I just said, "I feel sorry for you. You're in a cult." And when I said that, he didn't like it. He said, "How do you mean I'm in a cult?" I said, "No further comment." That was an editor of the Times of London.
I've had lots of similar conversations, and well, I asked one of them not that long ago, why was she ignoring me? And she said, "Because sometimes you're very rude." And I've never, ever been rude. I've been direct, I've been blunt, I've been forthright, but I've never been rude. But to them, in their little snowflakey worlds, someone being direct is someone being rude. I basically said, "You've all got blood on your hands because you're not reporting this. In the time that you haven't reported this, thousands more people have been killed. And
Sure.
you could have helped stop it." They don't like it when you talk to them straight.
Yes, sorry for
Thanks,
that.
Jacqui. I'm over and out.
Oh, Jackie's a gem. So Jacqui, you remind me a lot of people who presented to this group, like Craig Parder-Cooper's another, but there are others. I don't think you'd argue with me. They just have this aura about them. They speak the truth. They're very direct. People accuse them of being rude, but they're not rude at all. They're in their own world, telling the truth, and they don't work with anybody. They work on their own, and that's the best way to do it, because then you can rely on your instinct. But we met many, many people in this group, just like you, just like Craig Parder-Cooper. You're obviously not the same, but you have similar qualities, and I don't know what it is. It's a kind of inner strength, and very often the people who have most to say, they're very shy and they kind of reserved, not pushing themselves, and you just wish they'd make the point a little bit more, bit stronger.
We got our hands up, Stephen. We got our hands up. We're trying to make a point here.
Sure, yeah.
Can we get to Dave next, please?
David Collum, yes, David. Dave Collum is a professor of chemistry, so watch out. He might ask you a chemistry question.
I love chemistry. Go for it.
Dave, are you there? You're muted, Dave. Oh, maybe he's. Oh, here he is. Yes, go ahead, David.
I'm here. I'm working off a phone today because I was listening while traveling. I'm loath to chalk everything off to financial incentive. This one sounds like there must be serious financial incentives, which I couldn't gather from your presentation. I should add that Gretchen Morgenson and Josh Rosner wrote a book called The Plunderers, which is about the role of private equity in destroying hospitals and medical care. In case you're interested, what I'd like to know is, could you give us an overview of the financial incentives that would cause admitted sociopaths to do what they did, or is this just purely people wanting to play God?
Well, I haven't gone too far down that rabbit hole, but obviously we know that these nurses and doctors that have been carrying out these abhorrent crimes, because that's what they are paid quite handsomely. I do have a feeling that the mercenaries that were brought in to do this particular culling during the pandemic, that they were probably handsomely paid. I don't know how much. I've never been able to find out, because you can't find the nurses to talk to, because they seem to have disappeared, or because they don't want to talk, or they've been told not to talk. In the same way, I wanted to write an article on all the nurses that were dancing during the early years in the faux pandemic, and can't find any, because my suspicion is that a lot of these nurses were actors and dancers, and that they were brought in to perform these peculiar rituals in the corridors of these clearly empty hospitals for whatever reason, I don't know. But yeah, it's very hard to find anyone to speak out. Now, I've even got friends who are nurses who don't speak to me anymore. I had one friend, I've known her since we were 6 years old. We reconnected when we were about 40, stayed in touch on and off. When 2020 struck, she just went completely silent on me, and she doesn't speak to me anymore. It's like she's almost been told not to, because nothing happened between us. We didn't fall out or anything. So lots of strange things going on. When it comes to financial incentives for the hospital, there is a lot going on there. A friend of mine, Kate Shemarani, she's looked into this in massive detail. She's got all the facts and figures. She's absolutely brilliant. Very big brain on her, and she can remember all the details. I tend to focus more on the people and their stories. I'm not that great with remembering all the facts and figures and money stuff, but there are definitely financial incentives for this. And on a very broad scale, you've obviously got the savings in pensions, the savings in hospital treatment of the elderly in particular, because most of the people that were killed were, let's say, over 70. Although in my group, there were about 15 who were killed who are under 70, the youngest being 17, one being 28, one being 21, several in their 50s, not many in their 30s and 40s, as far as I can remember, but they generally tend to be over 70. But one thing the majority of them have in common in my group is that none of them were terminally ill, and none of them should have ever been put on any kind of end of life process or drugs. So yes, so there's government saving in a financial sense in that. And in fact, I remember a BBC article, and it just popped up again yesterday. I was trying to find it earlier. About, this must have been in 2020 or early 21, where there's basically, it was kind of a joyful article saying, oh, look how much money we're saving, the government is saving on pensions. Now all the oldies are dropping dead of COVID, So it was quite a bizarre and cruel article, especially if anyone was reading it who believed their loved one had died of the pretend killer virus. But so there's that, and you've also got there's a kind of I believe silent thing going on where if an elderly person goes into hospital more than like 4 times in 1 year, they'll just put them on end of life the next time they're in, because they're costing the NHS too much money. So it is a lot about the money, and I do believe that there are some kind of financial rewards, especially during COVID, when people, where the hospitals or even the doctors were being paid to put COVID on the death certificates. That was something that was talked about.
Well, so let me just interrupt. The financial incentives during COVID were very clear.
Yeah.
Right, that we get. But this story sounds like it's much more than just COVID. And that's the financial incentive trail that I'm having trouble finding, because the hospital, in theory, is being paid by someone to take care of these people. Yeah. And so it's unclear to me why they benefit from end of life response, because they're just going to get another person to fill that bed. So I'm trying to figure out how is someone must be getting compensated for terminating a life. Yeah. And the government saving money doesn't seem like the story to me. It seems like it's got to be at the hospital level.
Yeah, I think there is some very sinister underlying depopulation agenda going on, and a culling of the elderly. But like I said, I haven't got all the facts and figures to hand, but I know if you ever speak to Kate, she's got them all at her finger. Sorry, what was that?
Again, though, the incentive at the government level and the incentive at the hospital level, there's a big chasm between those two unless there's government payments that are directly to the hospital, which again, during COVID, we know there were, and they were egregious. But all these other cases, it seems to me it's really important to make the connection, which somehow says by virtue of this person being terminated, this is who gains. And that's the part that I've not been able to pick up on, besides the fact that there are evil people out there. You need evil people to do it, but you need more than evil people to do it. You do need an incentive to do it. And I could imagine private equity in the United States. Private equity owns all the hospitals, so private equity would say, if this patient is costing us too much money, awesome, I could believe that. And if that's the story, then I can get you in touch with Gretchen Morgenson and Josh Rosner, who wrote the book, and they're both legendarily good at this stuff. And they've already written the book about what private equity's done to healthcare, so they certainly could. They've certainly run into this if it's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the next documentary, looking into the financial side of it all, because it is something that is quite hidden. They're not going to be broadcasting the fact that they're paying people to murder patients in hospital and residents in care homes. So that is something that's worth looking to. I've only really focused on the last 4 years. So I am looking at the protocols that were being used during the COVID era, shall we say. But other people have been in the background looking at the financial aspect of it, but that's not something I've gone into in great detail as yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Jacqui, I can put you in touch with people with money. If that's a problem, if you want to do things and money's the problem for you, we know people, So
right, that's good to know. Thank you, Stephen.
Peter Huguet, who is a former policeman. Thank you, David, for your comment and question.
Hi, Jacqui. Thanks for all you do. Your film, well, you're well known. You're one of us. And I think, something that's come out here tonight is we've realized that, they shut the door on us. The judiciary is compromised, corrupt. The police are compromised. The government, well, let's not go there. I don't want to swear on air. So they've played a blinder. That's a British saying for those of you abroad. They've really played a fantastic game here. And we're all on the outside shouting. And people are waking up. I live on a small cul-de-sac here in West Wales. Of 9 houses, 2 of the people on our cul-de-sac have got... they're dying of cancer. They've got terminal cancer, and one's a nurse, 61 years old, wife of a golfing friend of mine. And they're starting to wake up, but they don't want to see it. It's too painful. We understand that. Yeah. But my question and statement to you, Jacqui, really is, have you done a bit with Geza Terriani yet?
Yeah, lots. I know him very well. In fact, when I was in court, when I mentioned being in court with Matt Hancock, that was his court case, Geza's against Matt Hancock.
I believe it was. I remember Geza saying he was meeting you and things. Well, I don't know if you know, he may have mentioned to you that he's in touch with a lawyer come ex-police officer who's helping him. Well, that's me.
Oh, right.
And in that court hearing, the judge you referred to, and this is good for people to know, this is actually prima facie evidence of how corrupt it is. The judge in that saying, I put it in the talk earlier on in the chat, the judge there, when Matt phoned me at the recess at lunchtime during that court case against Matt Hancock, where Matt Hancock had complained of harassment against Geza. We've all seen the little videos down in the underground. He followed him. There was pushing and shoving, but not by Geza. It was actually the other way around. The police, everything was doctored. It was all made to look like that. And people will believe that this opinionated little northerner, and here's a, pillar of our community, Matt Hancock, the health secretary. The way they painted it was horrendous. Anyway, Geza phoned me at lunchtime and said, look, he said this, and the judge, Matt Hancock, said that he hadn't heard the word midazolam in this hearing. He didn't know what they were talking about. So in fairness, I said, look, you need to get the evidence out there. So they got Matt Hancock's press secretary, if I'm correct, to say, yeah, there was a meeting on April the 21st last year, or 2021, whatever, and Matt sort of chaired it, and it was to make sure, and he was asked by government, have you got enough midazolam to get us through the pandemic? Yeah. At which he said, more than enough. So that's perjury.
Yeah, that actual House of Commons, we've got that at my film A Good Death. It starts with that. It was on April the 17th, 2020, when they had that discussion. It was with MP Dr. Luke Evans, who's also a GP as well as an MP, and it was very scripted. Luke Evans is asking Matt Hancock whether we've got enough drugs, end-of-life drugs, including midazolam and morphine, to help people when they're passing away, was his actual term. And Matt Hancock said, yes, we do. So he is aware of that word since April 2020. Geza shouted it out at him last year, saying whatever, you killed people with midazolam or whatever, and this was in 2023, so almost January 2023, so almost 2 years later. Matt Hancock said he'd never heard that word before in his life, and the judge during that court session that I was in, he had no understanding of what Geza and his lawyer were talking about. He thought midazolam was a vaccine, and it was just unbelievable. So he was referring to it being a vaccine, and no one could interrupt, no one could correct him. Obviously, we were told to keep. We're all sitting on our hands, biting our tongues, because this guy was an idiot, and Matt Hancock's smiling and obviously not correcting me either, because he's pretending he's never heard the word anyway. So we can prove very easily that was a that he committed perjury in the previous court hearing when in June the previous year, when he denied that. Very easy, but so many MPs and even higher up get away with perjury. There's been many cases of perjury. Just it doesn't touch them at all. They can say and do what they like and lie as much as they like. If you or I did it, we'd be arrested on the spot. But
we would. You're quite right. We would be, Jacqui, and they are watching us. And one of the strengths we've got here is that when they're probably looking at these recordings afterwards, or maybe even online now, they think, that's defamation, etc. Yeah, bring it on, because we're telling the truth and we've got evidence of it. Because when Geza phoned me and I said, you need to get it out in the court document regarding the fact that, and he said, what we did then was we got the press secretary and we proved it from April 17th, 2020. So we got it there. And the judge was challenged in that hearing. And this is what I insisted that Geza's legal team do, challenge the judge that he mentioned he hadn't heard about it. And the judge, am I right, said something like, or maybe Mr. Hancock forgot.
I don't remember that specifically, but I know he wasn't allowed to talk about it at that November court hearing. He was told, no, this is a completely separate issue. What you're saying here, you need to come back again and appeal and bring that up at a different. That's kind of what
But according to Geza, to me, then when they went to the next hearing, which Geza thought was an appeal, the judge turned around and said, "This is not an appeal. This is a totally new hearing," which would then avoid dealing with the perjury. So I think we can all see here what they're doing. It's smoke and mirrors. Now, wouldn't that then, just a thought, Jacqui, knowing how passionate Geza is, and he doesn't give a damn. I'm also dealing with the Metropolitan Police and British Transport Police, the removal of the pen. We're now at IOPC level, which is the Independent Examiner of Police. We're getting nowhere. We're coming up against that brick wall again. How about a program focusing on that perjury, focusing on the Geza fight, because he is a charismatic character. People will get a cheeky chappy. And he will not give up. Just a thought about a way in and the perjury and the midazolam, and it rekindles the fire, because there are people now I'm speaking to in my local circles, and a lot of retired police officers who are very high-ranking police officers. They're all now talking openly about their colleagues dropping dead and people's breathing slowing down and things. So I think there might be more of an appetite for it now, Jacqui. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get so many ideas for documentaries. We are going to start thinking about our next one, what it's going to be about. So yeah, I could see, as he was describing it, I could see it, you know, that would definitely work. I mean, as popular as he is, he's also unpopular. A lot of people don't like him. He's got a lot of enemies, which is often the way when you're out there speaking the truth and not giving a damn what people think, you know, and that's something I've got to admire about him. And I'm the same. I'm very similar in that way. I don't really care what people think. I care a bit more than Gazer does, because he really is kind of kamikaze with it. But he is
different level,
yeah. He is a very strong character, but a lot of people don't like him. But it would be good to show a bit of sort of insight into his life and why he's doing what he's doing. Yeah, and I think that would be an interesting documentary. So I'll put it on the list. Thank you.
Brilliant. I'd be happy to, you know, Gez's got my details. I'd be happy to help out as well with regards to getting involved in you know, the court hearing there, which is an absolute sham, which technically should be investigated. The police should, but there's no point going to the police. But yeah, please, Jacqui, I think that could be a real way to ignite the debate for midazolam and Matt Hancock lying in court. Thanks, Jacqui.
Could I ask you, Peter, what was the reason given for the new hearing for Geza? Why? And also, was it a criminal trial? Was there a jury or not?
Do you know, Stephen, that the rules have gone out the window. The rule of law is at best, and I've said this before, suspended, at worst dead, as is democracy. I defended a case for a local business a while back. They wrongly found against the business. We hadn't been told about the court hearing. So I went in to set the judgment aside. And the very same judge that made the judgment in our absence, having not admitted openly, she didn't even read our 150-page dossier that I'd prepared for the firm. And when I hit her with it, they tried to pull the rug from her. And I warned my client that they were going to try and pull the rug from underneath us. And it's very hard, if you don't turn up for court, to have standing in the next hearing, because obviously we all know, I think, when a court hearing date is posted, it's deemed served. But luckily, I was able to show that they sent from the court to the wrong house in relation to that court case. So the rug she tried to pull, which was, you should have turned up for the hearing, I don't have to listen to you. Her face was, this is not long ago, about a month ago. She had to listen to us, and she actually set her own judgment aside in that court. Now, that judge shouldn't have been hearing her own judgment, which was erroneous. It was wrong. It had no, you know, legal basis. So
hang on a minute, she sets her own judgment aside and then appoints herself for the next hearing. Yes,
indeed, yeah. And
so when I spoke for the cherry, Peter,
and Stephen, I played golf 3 weeks ago with one of the heads of the Ministry of Justice. The chances of this, unbelievable, a director of the Ministry of Justice. And I hit him with all of this, and he agreed totally that that should not have happened. I hit him that it was against the rule of law. I also hit him about the Coronavirus Act being ultra-virus illegal, because he came in 6 days after coronavirus was dropped to the level of the Common Code. Oh, we had to make decisions quickly. No, you didn't, because the death rate was higher in 2018. He rolled over completely. He knows. And I won't say anything more, but I had a very interesting chat with him. But he admitted that the system is broken, and I've proven it in 2 court cases. So she should not have heard it. And he was shocked. And he said it should not have been her. But she had to set her own. And ultimately, then we were going to a full hearing afterwards. But the case was dropped in our favor, because they didn't want the shitstorm that she'd, you know, sort of brewed up in that case. They didn't want it aired again, so he was told to drop his case. That's happening in my case too. So
Sorry.
A reasonable man, Stephen. You're speaking as a reasonable man, asking reasonable questions. These are not reasonable times. The gloves are off. There are no rules. People like Jacqui, who's an investigative journalist, should have 100 people asking to work with her. Yet she's alienated. Her friends won't speak to her. The same as us as lawyers, retired police officers, doctors, anybody who speaks up against the system. Dear God, it's a lonely place, but we keep going. Thank you, Jacqui. Thanks, Stephen.
Well, I was in a post office recently, well, actually a couple of days ago, and I ended up addressing the people in there about nothing working in the UK, and nobody caring about nothing working in the UK. And I said, this is very dangerous. And why it's dangerous is that the people will have no alternative but to go to the streets in the end. And that got their attention.
Thank you, Stephen.
But they were terrified of me, all of them. Pathetic.
Yeah, I do get that feeling as well, that there is some fear, you know, when you're that kind of blunt and kind of direct, and you're actually telling them how it is. They just don't like it. It is like they're scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they just
they go quiet and nobody spoke up. And but you know, they didn't like the fact that I said people will be on the streets, and they will. You know, if there's no safety valve in any society, in the end, they will be on the streets.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's right. Anyway. Oh, sorry, Mark Steele.
Oh,
Mark, can you please give Jacqui a question as opposed to a lecture on 5G?
I'm not. Do you want a lecture or a question, Jacqui?
Let's go for the question first, then we'll do the lecture. You've been on my show.
Yeah, it's certainly about your your horrific issues that you suffered. But the question is, and you know, I've said this before, the people that are currently dead and have died are basically the collateral damage to what they're planning. The plans to kill an awful lot more people due to Matt Hancock and Bill Gates' chipping of the general population. I think there's probably about 40 million of them walking around with a target on their back, and you know, just discovered the surgical weapon system that they're going to use right across main cities as these ultra low emission zone, what they call a camera, nothing of the sort, but a target acquisition weapon system. So that's basically what they're going to use in the fullness of time. But I think the fact that they've actually deployed this extremely environmental toxic technology, the radiation emissions, etc., they're in breach of a significant number of laws. And I think that's possibly a key, because if we take down the 15-minute city geofence, then the rest of it falls away. There's no point them pushing. And I do think we've got time. I think they cannot pull the trigger at the minute. If they did, there'd be massive. I mean, if they started killing 40-odd million people, well, the Russians will just walk into Europe. So they cannot do that. They're basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I do think we've got a bit of time to expose this geofence weapons deployment. It's pretty obvious what it is. It's not complicated. It would be very, very difficult for any of these regulatory bodies. And not only that, as what's taught in there before about judges, those judges have been vaccinated. They've actually got the track trace termination technology injected into them. Once that came into a court where they then realised that their life expectancy would potentially go to zero at the flick of a switch, that'll sharpen their their sort of allegiance to these cult members, knowing that they're going to die if they do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. Very good point.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a major issue, and you know, from a questions perspective, it's quite surprising how few people actually do any, let's say, investigations into the whole 5G issue when it's obvious to me that it's critical for the CBDC, the mass extermination agenda, the cause of COVID-19, the radiation pollution that caused the pneumonia-type symptoms, and also the potential of the chipping, like Matt Hancock admitted it in a WhatsApp post. What I cannot understand about, if I was in any court case in relation to that, my defence would be Section 3, and also the fact that the police aren't doing their job in relation to Mark Sexton's work and others. The fact they're not doing that job, someone's going to get murdered. Somebody will be murdered, and it'll be the police's fault. I've heard some horrific tales where, young girls, 18-year-olds, they're basically forced to take vaccines to go to university. They've been crippled for life. Some of them are dead. There's got to be a father out there who's got what it takes, or an uncle or some other family member that basically thinks, well, if the police aren't going to do that job, I'm going to have to do it for them. And I can tell you now, I've definitely got a defence for them.
That's very interesting, because I've spoken to a lot of people who've lost loved ones to involuntary euthanasia, the murders that have been going on, the culling, and they are at that point now. They're like thinking, do you know what? They say they could not be in the same room as Matt Hancock because something bad would happen, and they're actually kind of getting to the point now where they're thinking it would be worth it, even if they got put in jail for the rest of their lives. It would be worth it, because they are so. They've got to the point, when they get through the stages of grief and stuff. When they get to anger, they're really angry. They are fuming, but it's actually making them ill because they're not able to express that, do anything about it. So
Jacqui,
they're coming at us from all angles, when it comes to depopulation and the general culling of the world population. And 5G is obviously one of them. Euthanasia is another one. I think they're a bit disappointed with the results of the euthanasia and the poisonous jabs. I don't think they think they've killed enough.
They didn't kill anywhere near as many as they expected. They expected a far larger cull. In fact, I think the first round, the 2019 attack, with the contaminated flu vaccines, the estimate was they're going to kill about 2 million just in the UK. I think, what was it, about 80,000, something like that. So they didn't hit that number at all. But you only have to look at the F-35. The F-35, it's the most advanced 5G weapons platform ever. It's the most expensive thing they've ever spent. They can't even get it to fly. So if you think that the defense industry are going to come up trumps with our weapons systems, theoretically, they should have killed a lot more people with the contaminated flu vaccines when they switched 5G on, and it didn't happen. I did literally expect, them in the millions just in the United Kingdom, and it didn't happen. But the defense in law to this, if anybody was to take action due to the fact that the police haven't acted, there is an ongoing significant threat. Anybody who's been vaccinated or targeted, and they can be surgically removed at will using the equipment that they've actually installed. Street furniture, they've got these plate lenses with apertures where they can shoot people. You've got the ULEZ guns. So there's all of this technology that they've actually deployed. Most nodes and most smart technologies all have access points where they can create death, especially with people who have got these nanomaterials washing around their cardiovascular system. So that imminent threat, if let's say someone was to take the law into their own hands due to the fact that the police haven't, won't, can't, for whatever reason, it's a sort of thing that could kick the whole thing up a gear. I was in London with the Blade Runner guys, and I think we're going to try and do something pretty publicly about removing the weapons system. We've had several successes. Unfortunately, the Crown don't want to carry on. We had a case in Wolverhampton Crown Court. We've got another couple of cases where the Crown are struggling to try and keep these cases out of the courts. In fact, there was a no-show for the Crown at Wolverhampton, and this was where a guy went out and threatened the lighting crew with a gun. It's a serious offence. He knows that the LEDs are part of a weapons programme. His defence was Section 3, criminal justice system, self-defence, and the Crown has said it's not in the public interest to carry on with the trial. So we've had a few like that, so that they are in a panic, because I think we're far too early. They don't have all their eggs, all their birds in line. They don't have everything that they wanted, for this general kill. And I think we can definitely do something about it. We can definitely pull the whole thing to pieces.
Yeah, I think with the whole depopulation agenda, whether you believe it or not, it is clear that they are wanting a large swathe of us dead. And I think, that the whole euthanasia thing is a part of that. And ideally, they'd like all of us to kill ourselves. That would be the ideal scenario, such as, just voluntary euthanasia, shall we say, like in Canada and other countries around the world. Now, I think there's 7 countries that they now assisted dying, or, being helped kill yourself, if you like, is actually legal. And they're really pushing it here. And I think the reason is that they just want less people around. Obviously, less people are easier to control and for surveillance purposes, and also it's just neater and tidier. I wouldn't be surprised within the next 50 years or so that they put a limit on people's lifespans. It's all sounding a bit Logan's Run and futuristic, but I do believe that that's where we're heading, and that they will, once they've passed the assisted dying bill, they've tried, and that it will be passed in the near future. I do believe that, and we will be probably one of the next countries on the list of countries that make euthanasia legal, which is, as we all know, a massive slippery slope in that it can be totally abused. And as we know as well, in Canada, children are being euthanized. Poor people are allowed to say, oh, I want to be euthanized. And what about the story recently? The woman who was so severely vaccine damaged, she complained to the government, and they offered as a solution euthanasia. So, which is really kind of them. This is the way it's going. And I think that's what they want. They want people. They don't want elderly people in the world. They're the useless eaters. They're the ones using up all the resources in the government's minds. And they want rid of them. And I think this is the ultimate plan, that they're going to want people to either euthanize themselves or to agree to be killed. And this is the way it's going. And I've often had this question in my head for the last 3 or 4 years. Is this the way we're all going to die? Is this because we never know what our deaths are going to be, but one day we'll know which date we're going to die, because we'll have made an appointment at the clinic. So I do genuinely feel that that's the way it's going, but we have got a window to put a stop to it if enough of us protest. But sadly, that doesn't seem to be happening. Most people don't even believe it's going on, let alone are going to protest about it. So,
it's definitely going on. Jacqui, so even worse than what you just described now is the Universe 25 experiment of the 60s. And what was that about? It was about the mice. Do you know about this?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. And the mice, it seems to me, they decided, so they were actually observing mice because they wanted to think about how human beings would cope with this. I'm going to get the documents from somebody. I think it's much more important than people have realized. And I think what they really want to do is encourage people to not want to live anymore, just like the mice didn't want to live. They didn't even want to have sex in the end. Right. And there were groups of mice. It was really bizarre. And guess why it's Universe 25? I only heard this 2 days ago, I think.
2025.
I'm thinking, why is it 25? Is that 2025 or what? This was in the 60s. Apparently, they did the experiments 25 times. Now, why would they want to be so sure?
That's interesting, yeah. I'm going to
25 times the experiments were done. And they all agreed. All the experiments agreed. 25 times they did it, and the same results every time. So I think they're encouraging people in this country and around the world to not want to live. People don't want to live because the world doesn't function as they thought it did.
I've spoken to so many people who just repeat, just parrot things they've heard, and they go, "Oh, depopulation, that's a really good idea. You know, there's far too many people in the world." Number one, we don't know how many people there are in the world. We only know what we're told. I've never counted them, and there's definitely enough space for people. I don't believe there's as many people in the world as we're told. You know, how can we actually even find that out? Number two, a lot of people just say, "Oh, yeah, it's a great idea." But when you actually say to them, "So how do you propose to depopulate the world?" You know, the only way to do it is to kill people who are already alive or to stop people being born. They're the only two ways of doing it. Neither of those are good, you know. And then they go, "Oh, yeah, I didn't really think about that." Yet they still go around going, "Oh, depopulation, what a great idea. There's too many of us." So, yeah, a lot of people don't really think things through. They just hear a line and think, "Oh, that sounds good. I'll go with that." And sadly, I used to have great faith in the intelligence of people. Most people I meet are pretty intelligent and critical thinkers and can work things out. But sadly, over the last 4 years, I've found out that's not the case. And
Absolutely. And that's a really big shock. It's been a really big shock. I used to have quite a lot of respect for human beings. I'm not criticizing present company, but I'm just shocked at how stupid people are and how short-sighted and how hubristic they are. And how lacking in wisdom they are. And knowing that they have no wisdom, they don't seek someone who has got wisdom. It's crazy.
But I have found when I've actually, especially at the start in 2020, I did actually go out of my way to talk to people, you know, in shops and restaurants and pubs and you know, people who work there, and explaining stuff to them and how, you know, that what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, what was legal and what was not legal, and how they needed to be careful with certain things. And by and large, most of them were pretty grateful and were saying, "Oh, wow, you know, I didn't know that they were open to hearing." So a lot of it is about how you present the information as well. You know, if you charge in like ranting and raving, they're just going to listen to you. So there is a.
Well, I wish I could be as diplomatic as you, Jacqui.
I wouldn't say I was diplomatic. I mean, I noticed that a lot of the shops and restaurants and pubs were asking people, you know, what were asking me, you know, why aren't you wearing a mask? And so I was explaining it, you know, thousands of times. You can't ask someone that, you know, if you actually look at the government. So in the end, I just printed out some little friendly looking flyers and just saying, "Look, this is to save you money, because in the end, if you do this wrong, you could actually lose a lot of money if they take you to court." You know, I said, "I could actually take you to court now for what you've just done, but I'm a nice person. I'm not going to do that. But read this, and hopefully then you'll realize, you know, that you can't do that, or you might be in trouble." And especially small businesses, they can't afford to lose in court, you know, £8,000 or £9,000, which is what a couple of people did actually get in compensation. And they were actually quite grateful, going, "Oh, I didn't realize that at all," you know. And I'd show them the government website, and then they next time they wouldn't do it, you know. And now, of course, people know that lots of people, those people that I spoke to back then, realized that the whole thing was ridiculous. Although it's very hard for most people to admit it, because they don't like admitting that they were sucked in and duped, you know. And they also don't like to think, you know, especially when it comes to the jabs, that they were, you know, put themselves and their families at serious risk. It's a really hard thing to accept, to understand.
Well, they were royally duped, because there was no pandemic, in my opinion, and there wasn't even a novel disease.
Yeah.
So anyway, COVID-19, I mean. So next one is Jim, as long as he doesn't talk about the racially specific spike protein. Come on, Jim.
Thank you. And
radiologist, ask a good question. And not about the racially specific spike protein.
Genetically, let's be accurate. It's not racially specific. It's genetically specific spike protein in vaccine or virus form.
Well,
but my question,
Jim, I am quoting you from about 6 months ago or a year ago. I don't know, maybe modified.
Yes, and I have to modify that. Genetically specific. The ACE2 receptor is genetically specific. The furin cleavage is genetically specific.
Oh, great.
The TMPRSS2 is genetically specific. Very good. Okay, but anyway,
it's a bit like human species and human race. So a lot of people say the human race when we're the human species, of course. Last time I checked.
Okay, thank you. I'm not.
Go ahead, Jim.
Around that. But the question is, but thank you very much. Great presentation. And the question is, how do we get this information into the mainstream? Because as you've met with quite a bit. I mean, it's a very good information, but it doesn't even make it out of our silos that we are put in Twitter. That are, we think that we've got freedom of speech, but it doesn't seem like we have freedom of speech because we're just talking to each other and being limited, and then followed by porn bots that like your images and track you somehow. So the question is, how do we? And it seems to be intelligence that's doing this, the intelligence agencies. How do we get this information out to the mainstream without spending our lives in court?
Yeah, it's well, from my own personal experience, I've been doing it on my own, and it's taken me this long to realize I've been banging my head against a brick wall all that time, they are just not interested in the slightest. So they were interested enough at the start when I had the meetings, because they obviously hadn't received instructions at that point. And I know it sounds paranoid, but as my mum used to say, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. But at the same time, I just think that they've been given some kind of instruction, because the way they've been reacting to me is across the board. This blanket resistance to anything that goes against the government narrative. I started in 2020. The very first article I wrote was when I heard that the coronavirus, as they called it at the start, had been downgraded to a not a high consequence disease. And so I read up on that and thought, well, this is great news for all the people who believe there's a killer virus out there. This is great news. It's going to calm them all down, because everyone, a lot of people were getting in a panic about it. And so I went to the papers. I wrote the article first, brought the article saying, isn't this good news? You can put it on the front pages of all your newspapers, and everyone can calm down and relax, and it will be gone away in a couple of weeks. None of them were interested in that. And I just thought, that's strange. Why don't they want to reassure people? Then I realized quite quickly they wanted to do the opposite. They wanted to scare the pants off people, as Matt Hancock actually said in one of his WhatsApp messages. So, yes, so they weren't interested in reassuring the public and making them feel better. They wanted to frighten them as much as they could. The second article I did was about DNRs, as I mentioned earlier. I did it for the Telegraph, and they wanted it at first. Then obviously they got instruction that they weren't to publish it. And then obviously I started pushing the whole thing about the euthanasia, which I think in the very early days, obviously I had a couple of meetings, but after that, they were just like, please stop sending us this stuff, just go away. They didn't want to know, or they were told. And now, 4 years down the line, I'm just feeling that they must have been told, because, that they're all doing the same thing. So, yeah.
That's precisely the question. How did they, meaning the hospitals and the CEOs, organize to be doing the same thing? The same document, the same prescriptions, and preventing the use of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, as well as other medications, and preventing the use of hyperbaric oxygen chambers rather than ventilators. How did they all get to do the same thing? And there was one guy who said, "Oh, I got transferred to the VIP protocol, and then all of a sudden I was on ECMO, and they stopped giving me the remdesivir." So there are VIP protocols. There are death by remdesivir protocols. Who transmitted these to each of the hospitals? How exactly did they do that? And what financial incentives do the hospital CEOs get to ban even one person getting ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine? Do you have those documents yet? And by the way, these in the United States, they're called GPOs, group purchasing organizations, and pharmacy benefit managers. If you're a shareholder hospital, you make billions in kickbacks from your GPOs.
I think there's a lot of that going on, but it's hidden and it's not spoken about. It's very hard to find out about. I know people have been looking into that side of things, and they do have some information on it, but I haven't got that myself.
Okay, well, I'll give you a hint. In the United States, it's hidden in the Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General.
Right.
They are supposed to oversee the secret contracts that govern the kickbacks, giving charging $800 for insulin that costs $2 to make, or I put in the thing Daraprim, that's the treatment for the Toxoplasmosis gondii, that the cat shit fever, as Gary says. it went from $17 to $750 a pill. Martin Shkreli went to jail, but it's still priced really high. Yet it costs $2 to make and be made on a kitchen table. And it's anti-parasitic. So all these things that are being prevented are anti-parasitics.
Yes, of course, yeah, and they're being prevented because maybe I really don't know what's going on financially there. Maybe we do know that obviously GPs get commission, for prescribing drugs and for giving vaccines. I think here in the UK it's about £15 for each vaccine that's administered. Maybe Dr. Jerry would know more about that than me being a retired GP. What do you think, Jerry? Oh, he's not listening, but yeah, I mean, there were plenty of stories that, and it wasn't a hidden thing. There was a news story, one GP in Wales, like boasting that he'd made £60,000 in a weekend, because he'd given so many jabs, thousands of jabs, non-stop for 3 days, and people were clapping for him and giving a big round of applause and saying he was a hero. So there are definitely kickbacks, definitely commissions going on. We've always known that. The pharmaceutical companies send their salesmen out to GPs' offices, to actually sell their products. And one interesting story, when my dad came out of the care home, my dad was diabetic, and with the help of a friend, we managed to cure his diabetes within 3 weeks. We put him on an alkaline vegan diet. And my dad was great because he loved all food. He'd eat anything you gave him, So he just ate the good, healthy food. Within 3 weeks, he was having bad reactions to his insulin injections. So I went to his GP, and the GP said, yeah, he's not really diabetic anymore. And I said, well, is that a result of us putting him on this vegan alkaline diet? And she said, yeah, most definitely. And I said, well, why don't you tell everyone to do that who's diabetic? And she said they won't do it. She said most people just want to eat cake, and they don't want to go on these diets. But it's definitely, that is a cure, for diabetes, and he was cured within 3 weeks. So but they would rather. They believe, I mean, that's not necessarily true that people won't do it. They're not giving people the opportunity. They're not giving them the option. But I think some GPs would rather prescribe the drugs and get the commission, than actually give people natural cures, which they know work.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And Dr. Jerry hear us now? Jerry, can you hear us? No, Jerry can't hear us. I don't know what he's doing there. Writing his
Jacqui, it's Susan Downs is a filmmaker in the US of A.
Hi, Susan.
So maybe you know each other. Oh, great.
No, we
Yes.
don't.
We don't.
I'm coming to England in a few days.
How are you?
Yeah, for 4 months. I'd love to collaborate in any way. I made one movie on nutrition called The Big Secret. A congressman censored it, took it off Amazon Prime. My agent put it on YouTube, got 2 million views. I made one on the COVID scam with a Hollywood actor, Kevin Sorbo, but also commenting on banning hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. You can't get the emergency authorization if there are existing treatments for a disease. So the emergency, they had to shut down all the doctors. I saw memos in April 21 where doctors treating COVID with these medications would lose their license. The same thing was going on in Australia and Canada, all around the world, because I interviewed Peter McCullough on this. Then it came out that if you talk about it, you lose your license. Then I saw a memo from Homeland Security. If you make the government look bad, that's not hard to do. You're a domestic terrorist. And then I saw a request for employment to man camps. We call them FEMA camps. And workers to go round up people for a health issue, and climate control will be a health issue. We've got lots of military age people coming into the country who won't mind running up our neighbors. And anyway, if you want to collaborate on any films, I sent you a message. My email address is in it. And, any collaboration, I'll be there for 4 months, and I'm living in Bloomsbury.
Oh, right. That's only about an hour from me at the moment. So I'll definitely love to meet up with you, Susan.
Yeah, I'm a mythbuster, better known as a shit stirrer.
I like it.
And some of the things that they were talking about, the police and what was going on there, that's very interesting to me as well. I mean, I'm very interested in corruption, and that the government is a gift that keeps giving.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I'll definitely make an arrangement to meet up with you. Definitely
I'll
in the
put my
next.
email in again.
Yeah.
And Jacqui,
Sent you the movies.
Susan is not only a filmmaker, but she's also a doctor. So she's an MD.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
I worked for the NHS till they
Dear.
took all the American work visas away.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, that's really good to know.
I'm on the consultant registry, so there's my email address.
Oh, yeah, got it. Susan Downs.
Also an engineer, electrical engineer from MIT. So I've interviewed all the experts on EMF and glyphosate, on toxins, and a lot of them on nutrition. So,
Susan, can I ask you, is there anything equivalent to the do not resuscitate notices in the United States?
yeah, we have a DNR, do not resuscitate.
You have that. Do you think that it's providing an opportunity for doctors, nurses, paramedics, and all the rest of them to operate criminally, as in the UK?
There's always the possibility of individuals doing things. My best friend of 40 years, who's a physician, just died from hospital. And I mean, and so I've had this conversation, she thinks that they're trying to morphine drip everybody. Geriatric nurse that's, thinks it's just a bunch of various individuals. So I don't know. But I remember in the VA that, if the person was not DNR, we'd kind of do what is called a slow code, meaning get a Hamburg first and then go. So
Sorry,
I think it's an individual thing, how ethical people are. Going into medical school, many were idealistic, many had dollar signs in their eyes, and many who were idealistic came out drained, because when you're working, 40-hour shift every 3 days, I mean, it just takes a lot out of you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, sorry, what did you say then? There were people who were kind of, you gave it some, you went like that to your neck or something, but what were people doing quietly?
Oh, well, in the VA, sometimes if there was somebody who coded, the staff would react like with a slow code, meaning they might go get a hamburger first. They didn't rush as they should.
Yeah.
I see. And do you think there's any evidence that in the United States, people are being deprived of fluids and nutrition as in the UK?
My best friend who died, physician, she was absolutely convinced that the plan was to take people out with morphine drips. She thinks it's being instilled in the medical education and the whole culture. She was in the hospital and step-down units, skilled nursing units, and people didn't seem to give a crap. Another friend was dealing with hospice, and I mean, it just, maybe the people are burned out. It's cold. I mean, where my friend was, I mean, she lost vision, so they said to get to an ophthalmologist immediately. That took him 6 or 7 weeks, so she lost her vision. It just seems like people don't care. She feels
But Susan, they should care, because they're potential victims, and all their family, who they say they love, they're potential victims too. Their friends, they're also potential victims. So this seems to me to be. So I encourage you. I've just seen Dave Collum there. He was asking Jacqui whether she was interested. I think it'd be very good for you three to get together and discuss. And I can join if you like, but probably wouldn't want that. But I'm just saying that, is this going on? Because I think the DNR notices came from the United States to the UK. And, I think it's a possibility, and probably it is a probability as well, that this is going on around the world, that criminal euthanasia is taking place, and it needs to be stopped, because they're all potential victims. And as in COVID times, people will not dare to go into hospital. I don't trust any doctors in the UK.
I'm not going to a hospital.
Exactly.
See, I don't think, I'm idealistic. I believe in the Hippocratic Oath. Oh, our Hippocratic Oath is gone. It's now more about equity, not about do no harm. But I'm idealistic, think that healing is a sacred art, like, the higher power and the person who's entrusting his life to you. That's something sacred to me. And I don't understand these people any better than I understand Fauci, but we'll never understand a sociopath because we just won't. Even if they get us to think that they agree with us, they won't. We'll never understand it. There's no point in trying.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, but the point is, Susan, you have the ability, together with Jacqui, to expose this. And Dave Collum was asking whether he could, he's got people he knows.
Love it.
Yes?
I arrive next Monday. Let's get to work.
Yeah,
Dave?
exactly.
Dave's, well, I think he's muted. I'm not sure he's there, but anyway.
Dave, put my telephone number in there. I put my email in there, my cell phone, 02, somehow or the chip got mucked up, but my email is in there. I'm in the heart of Bloomsbury, between Russell Square and King's Cross.
Oh, Susan, our screening of Playing God, we're doing a second screening, is literally around the corner from there. So hopefully you can come along to that. It would be great to see you there. It's in just off Golden Square. So that's very, very close to where you'll be staying. So we'll stay. I'll send you an email
there. So that's where I hang out.
It would be great if you could come along to that, and you can meet the directors of my latest film, and also.
Oh, I'd love to. I put my email in there. I sent you a private message. I put in the chat my movie on COVID. It got over 85 awards. Of course, they're not top-notch film festivals, and it's been censored on Vimeo.
What was the name of that the film of yours?
Something Ain't Right. I put it on Rumble, and I've got a channel there. It's under Susan R. Downs. I've got a lot of videos from the Silicon Valley Health Institute, because YouTube is censoring anything on vitamin C, off, vitamin D, off, what's in your food, off, mercury in your teeth, unhealthy, off. Ozone treatment, off. So I've got a lot of stuff parked on Rumble at Susan R. Downs, I think is where you find it. And Something Ain't Right is a COVID movie. And The Big Secret, I put these in the chat.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm just making a note of them all. And
Susan, you saw David Charalambous present to us recently, and for that matter, the mind control expert Jason Christoph. Do you think would they be helpful to you and to Jacqui? Do you think?
I interviewed Jason Christoph for my radio show. I've also interviewed a psychiatrist, Joel Dimsdale, who's written about Nazis and mind control. So I'm all over that.
I see. Do you think that David Charalambous, for example, the guy who's talking about messaging, and essentially mind control, but also how to get the message out to the public, do you think he would be useful to you and to Jacqui?
I'm not sure. I'd have to investigate it further anyway to get it out. I was doing film festivals, and I don't know how many people attend those. I have no idea, because I can't put it anywhere. I had an agent, but she was told not to post any videos or documentaries on COVID, so the agent wouldn't take it because she was told not to post them.
Yeah, and also one of the guys in this group is Ray Fernandez, I think his name is. So he is the MK Ultra expert.
Yeah, that stuff's fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah, very good. So thank you, Susan. Peter Underwood.
Hello, Stephen. Thank you very much. Hello, Jacqui.
Hello.
The people in UK always laugh at me because I've emigrated to South Africa. The main reason for that is I want to be in the global south. So I've got a question for you that I asked lots of people, and I've never really got a positive answer. What percentage of the global population live in the southern hemisphere?
For everybody, is that, or for Jacqui?
Yeah, not as many as in the northern, as we know. I was just looking at a video about this yesterday. Because, if you believe that the Earth is
9%.
there in the first place.
9%.
But, yeah, it's a small percentage. Yeah.
How did you know that, Stephen?
Well, I think it was you who asked the same question about 2 weeks ago. I answered.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, I answered 10%, Peter, and you said no, 9%.
You're dead right. What a memory you've got, Stephen. That's quite
I have the
remarkable.
figures.
Quite
Yeah,
honest.
it's scary. It's really weird. I can remember telephone numbers.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that worries me.
It shouldn't worry you. I got all kinds of weird things that I remember. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. Eugenics. We're talking about, and you were talking about earlier about eugenics. I've got the sense that we're talking about the collective West. Population around about 1.1 billion. And a lot of I write about is that the global South is 85% of the population. Africa, for example, is something less than 6% vaccinated. Not so much, not quite in South Africa. It's something around 15%. There is a chasm between the global North, what I call the Five Eyes and what have you, and the global South. We have got a massive change now that's actually in place now, that's moving forward, multipolar as opposed to unipolar. When the USSR collapsed in 1991, it only took 6 years for America to decide that they were actually winning now. They thought they'd won, and they came up with this policy of total, what was it? Struth, my memory goes.
Project the New American Century, PNAC.
Absolutely. Quite right. Thank you, Stephen. My belief is that the Western civilization, built over 300 plus years after the Industrial Revolution and the consequent colonialization of the global South, is actually coming to an end. And I think what we're facing now is the last, I suppose, the death knell of our current model. And I write about this every week, twice a week, actually. And I can see from my observation in South Africa, in the global South, the demise slowly of the Western civilization. What is your feeling about the bigger picture?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So the bigger picture with regards to what? Sorry, I'd missed the end bit there.
Oh, sorry. The bigger picture of the global South versus the global North, and the demise of the 300 plus years of the white, would you believe, supremacy, the white domination of the world over that period of time. And it's coming to an end as I can see it. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I hadn't really looked into that, to be honest, in great depth. But yeah, it's a very interesting subject and something I will look into now. So I don't, at this moment in time, have a particular view on that. I'm not, that's not my area of expertise at all. Like I said, I've been focusing on such a narrow subject for the last 4 years. Everything else, I mean, you know, prior to 4 years ago, I'd be watching like YouTube videos all over the place on everything, you know. But in the last 4 years, I've been a bit blinkered to other stuff. So yeah, when you ask me a very huge general question like that, I haven't really got an answer because I've been focusing on my subject, you know.
So
I'm sorry about.
So Sigrid Bhakti, Peter, he wrote in his book Corona False Alarm, And now, so he's an out-and-out scientist, but he's also a medical doctor. He's one of the best medically qualified people in the world. And he wrote in that book, "This is the end of the age of the Enlightenment." Do you remember that line in that book? So
I
actually,
do.
he was criticized by some people for being too narrow to solve what was going on, but he actually understood that this was the end of the age of the Enlightenment. And it's in that book, which came out in November 2020
Yeah.
from memory.
Yeah, I saw that. Stephen, you're absolutely right. And I think that all these machinations that are going on, what I call a poly crisis, generated as part of the death rattle of the Western way of life and the rise of the global South, and particularly the Asian way of looking at life. I have Chinese readers, and they say to me every time, the Western mind doesn't understand the Eastern mind. The Chinese are promoted as being the enemy, but actually the truth of the matter is that the Eastern method of living is cooperative. It's not competitive. I've looked into this in some depth, and my proposition is that the Western way of doing things is based on wheat. We can, a man with one horse can plough a field in one day, an acre, on his own. So consequently, the Western mind is competitive. We even have ploughing competitions in Britain, for goodness sake. On the other hand, the Eastern method is rice cultivation, and you can't do that on your own. You have to have a community. You have to work together to do a rice-based economy. And that's my basic simplistic way of looking at the way that different cultures look at each other. Do you have a feeling for that, Jacqui?
Yeah, again, I haven't really looked into that, but that does make a lot of sense. You know, there does seem to be more of a sense of community in other countries that I've visited. I've just come back from Peru, and you can see it there. You know, the people work together really well. They seem to be much calmer, much more friendly, much more open, more honest. Most countries, you know, that I visited, I went to Zanzibar back in March, and again, you know, the people very open, very friendly. Whereas you come back here and everyone is a lot more closed and in their own little bubbles doing their own little thing, and like you said, much more competitive as well. So yeah, that does stand out. Also, most people sadly in the UK are really miserable, and it's not, you know, half the time it's not their fault compared to other people in other parts of the world. That even the poorer people that I've met just seem happier and definitely more chilled, definitely more laid back, and just happier in themselves. And I think it's a lot about community and family and working together, like you said, because we don't really have that here anymore. That's totally like most people I've spoken to in other countries, especially African countries or South American countries, are horrified that people put their elderly relatives into a care home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a disgrace.
Why? They're saying there's no reason to do that. There must be
Absolutely.
someone in the family that will look after them. And the reason, you know, I explained to them, the reason is that people in the UK are working so much because they're not getting paid enough. So they have to work all the hours God sends to support themselves and their family. And they haven't got the time, the inclination, or the finances to support another member of the family. So they have to put them into a home. And
no, Jacqui, I think it's more than that. I think they've been encouraged to not take their responsibilities seriously. They think that the state should solve all problems, and that they actually believe that there should not be any problems. When you and I know that if you have problems to solve, you have to talk to other people. That brings you closer to other human beings, whether you like those human beings or not. And that what they're doing in the West, I see, and particularly in Sweden, but also in the UK, is they're taking people deliberately away from their humanity.
Yeah.
And so Jerome Corsi was on the call. He's a publisher in the United States. He knows a lot of people, and he could introduce you to people. But he wanted to ask you a question about a comment that he thought that the culling of the elderly and the people who are not thriving, shall we say, in the UK and in the US possibly, was all about breaking the family unit.
Yes.
And the effect of that, of course, is to decrease people's will to live, because obviously they're not going to be happy if they have no allies in the world. And their best potential for allies is their own family, even if families...
If they can isolate people, and like I said earlier, they're easier to control, easier to strike fear, easily to watch, you know. Whereas if people are grouping together, there's strength in numbers, as we know, and that's exactly what they don't want. And that was apparent during the last 4 years as well, when they were stopping people from meeting, you know, because they don't want people meeting and having discussions and making plans. They want you all isolated in your own little boxes, being terrified watching the TV, you know. So yeah, that's quite apparent. And like I said, when you go to other countries, you're thinking, God, why are these poor people so happy? And it's because they're surrounded by friends and family. They're all working together. They're all meeting, you know, all the time, and they have a better sense of community and a better support network. You know, they know they're never going to be abandoned. But what you said earlier, Stephen, I don't think it's as simple as that. And when I got my dad out of the care home, I thought, oh, I'll look after him. It wasn't possible for me as one person to look after him. You know, he had vascular dementia. He had lots of needs, physical sort of needs that I couldn't actually do. You know, I wasn't strong enough to like hoist him in and out of the you know, getting him washed and stuff. And also I just thought, well, if I do this will now become my whole life. I can't work anymore, you know. But this, and I really felt like I needed to do this work that I was doing. It sounds a bit selfish, but maybe it is to a degree, but I wanted to help lots of people, you know, and I knew my dad would be fine with a good carer as well, so better off with a carer, because me and him used to get on each other's nerves anyway. Half the time we'd be bickering and arguing, but you know, it's not actually possible for some people to look after their relatives, especially if they need lifting and stuff like that. And,
well, they did do it in the past, even in the UK and the US, but that's all gone, because people were encouraged to be selfish. And they didn't look at the consequences. What are the consequences of being selfish when you're young and not doing your duty and looking after your parents who brought you up? Well, you're going to be in the same position one day. So you create the society which you will inherit in the future, and nobody will care. People will care even less about the young people today, their deaths, you know, their old age.
Yeah.
So if they want to go down that road, well, good luck to them, you know.
I mean, a lot of young people
so
do have a strange attitude towards the elderly, like they're aliens or something. You know, they have no kind of feeling that they're going to be like that one day. They just see them as a separate sort of species almost. You know, these old people realize that they're going to be the same one day. And as you know, a lot of us here are edging in that direction. It's like, it does get a bit worrying, you know. It's like, what is going to happen? And you know, have we educated our children enough to know that there is a duty there to make sure that your elderly parents are looked after? Because there's the thing as well, a lot of kids don't like their parents, a lot of people don't like their parents. You know, we always imagine that, you know, that everyone loves their aging parents. They don't. Sometimes they think they're a pain in the arse and they get on their nerves.
But if you go to any society in Asia, it's a disgrace not to look after them.
Yeah,
absolutely, and rightly so. It's rightly so. And in South America and Mexico, but not in.
I'm thinking maybe I'll move to Peru and a nice Peruvian family can adopt me.
I've got to say, Stephen, you're so right. And the culture here in South Africa is exactly the same that Jacqui's. I mean, Jacqui's traveled the world. She knows. just the same as Peru. 85% of the world's population live in this kind of culture where the elder people are revered. Me, in South Africa, as a white man, are revered by everyone around me, black and white, and it doesn't matter. There's no racial differentiation here in South Africa at all. I see wonderful indigenous people, poor, yes, but very happy, always smiling, welcome me every day. Yeah. I'm absolutely humbled by the fact that I'm here and living in this amazing culture where people are revered, and elderly especially, and looked after by their
family. That used to be the case in the UK as well, and it used to be the case in the UK, yes, and in Australia. Yeah, so this is something
of course.
This has been engineered. People have been turned. It's just ridiculous, and they've encouraged avariciousness. People to be avaricious. Yeah. And no regard for the consequences, because if everybody's avaricious, of course, someone's got to lose. And anyway, Jeremy Willits is a bit of a philosopher, so let's hear from Jeremy.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there were 2 points. One was, I must apologise, I got home late, so I missed the whole call, so I'm going to watch this later with great curiosity, Jacqui. The one was just a quick question to all, was if in Jersey they're trying to introduce assisted dying now, and we're very alarmed with it. I haven't got the time to go and start arguing that both politically, but I do have some contacts who are, and I was speaking to them today, and I said I'd be on the call and see if I could reach out to any of you who are on the call, or any of you who may know other contacts who, especially Canadians, who have seen this introduced, the safeguarding, removed, so they're only, I think it's, if you're under the age of 18 now, it seems to be the only clause that can guard you against that. And obviously Canada's now become the world capital of organ transplants. So if any of you could email me, I've put who've got contacts who are familiar with this and opposed it, and the best way to oppose it, please get in touch with me by email, and then I will then maybe speak to you a little bit, and then
Jeremy, I encourage you to watch this entire video. I don't know how long.
I'm going to. I can't wait to watch it. I'm so annoyed I couldn't get back in time, so I will do that. The second thing is just going back to what you're talking about, with Peter talking, and Jerry's on the call, and Dave, I think, as well, is, I think what we're living through is just the collapse of the Western banking system, the lack of confidence in government. They've kicked the can down the road too far, and now they're not, they're going to have this reset, but it's going to be a currency reset, and we're going to have a sovereign debt crisis. And so the best way they can get away from that is to break up society, isolate individuals. The socialists did it in Russia. The people they hated the most were the independents, the farmers. That's why they stole all their land and killed and shot them, because they were independent of governments. They, I think they're determined to make the population reliant on government so that we can't fight back when the final reset comes.
Yeah, and look at Sweden. I can't. Well on the road. Jeremy.
Yeah. I mean, you can see everything they're doing is to break up society. They've, the media's owned. When you look at it from that sort of big point of view, they're controlling everything. And I think it's, are they going to? It looks like the Europeans want a war because Europe's such a basket case. So maybe they want to, normally when the governments get this bad, they always start wars and point the finger at the bloke over there to distract the population.
But Jeremy, it's no surprise, is it? When you encourage people to live their lives with no morals whatsoever. Yeah. People don't.
But it seems all part of it, doesn't it?
They don't know even what morals mean. So
yes,
but it's always going to end in tyranny and disaster.
It seems like they're trying to. They know the disaster's coming, so maybe they're trying to shape society, push society in a certain direction. So maybe they can then dictate the parameters by what we live afterwards.
I don't think they'll be successful. I don't think they understand.
No, I don't think they will. I think it's against human nature. So they, it won't work. It's just the damage they're going to do. But I don't know if
Jeremy.
Peter has a view on that, or any of the others have a view on it.
Well, we'll ask the guest. So, what about Jacqui? What do you have, Jacqui?
Well,
any view?
I think there's a lot more we could talk about, but obviously we've run out of time now because I think it was going to be 2.5 hours.
I'll be watching the whole video tomorrow with avid interest, Jacqui. Thank you so much.
We've had a really interesting chat. I mean, you touched there on something else that I'd really look into. It's pretty disturbing and dark and sinister. Organ harvesting, organ donation. That's something else I'm really interested in, and I've heard some.
Canada's now the world capital, so with this, it's just morally reprehensible. It's
there's a whole documentary in there for Susan, I think, and that's something I'd really be interested in looking. Most people are saying, "Oh, why do you want to look into that? It's so awful." But I have heard some absolute horror stories. I'll tell you briefly. One woman in my group, her husband was euthanized in front of her in hospital, and she got a lawyer to help her investigate what happened. And she asked the lawyer to ask the hospital for a post-mortem, because obviously in 2021, when this particular man was killed, there weren't any post-mortems being done, autopsies being done in the UK. And so the lawyer came back to her and said they can't do an autopsy, and the reason they've given is because his organs have been taken. And so she was really horrified and saying, well, we didn't give permission. And of course, in May 2020, they brought in the new law about organ donation. If you don't opt out of the organ donation system, you are de facto an organ donor. So she didn't realize that. Her husband had never realized that. And they just took his organs with no permission from anyone because he hadn't opted out of the system.
How can the government, the British government, allow that kind of law to be passed, So you have to be opted out.
They did it quite surreptitiously, quite stealthily back in May 2020. Lucky I was looking out for that kind of stuff. And as soon as it happened, I opted out. But even if you've opted out, they'll still do it. They'll still ignore it unless you've got people there to advocate for you at your moment of death and to say, by the way, you're not to take their organs because they've opted out. They'll just ignore that, And what's the chances of people, you have to make sure everyone knows about it, so they can actually make sure that doesn't happen when you die. But even if they do that, I'm sure they still do it anyway. Who's gonna check? It's such a horrible thought and such a horrible process. And of course, we've heard all the stories that the body has to actually be alive to have the organs removed. You can't remove the organs from a dead person. They're not going to be any use. And then therefore, the person who's having the organs removed will actually feel them being removed. They should have an anesthetic if there's organ harvesting going on. It's just horrendous. And I thought it was very, very suspicious, the fact that they changed the law at that particular point. So most people now in the UK don't know about that change in the law. So most people are now organ donors, whether they realize it or not, and they will have their organs harvested, especially if they're relatively young and reasonably, if their organs are reasonably healthy. And it's actually a horrendous thought, what I've just mentioned, and it's something that does need to be looked into. But it also would encourage euthanasia. That's another reason to get rid of people, like the woman I mentioned who was asked, could they have her husband's skin? And that's like something out of a horror movie.
So, yeah. So also, if you remove people's organs when they're alive, they're very likely to die.
Well, of course, yeah. What a way to go as well.
Correct. So that would be the finishing touch. So that cannot be legal. But also, so in England, it was opt-out, yes. In Wales, strangely, it was so in other words, you had to opt. No, that's right. So I rang up my surgery and I said, on no account I needed recorded on my notes that organs not to be taken. And
but you have to actually go and opt out. You have to have the certificate that you've opted out. I've got mine here in the drawer.
Yeah, but I was told by the surgeon, it hasn't come in. It's not the same in Wales. as in England. So in England, they brought in, as you say, I think 2018 was it?
No, 2020 they brought it in May 2020.
Wow.
The
The
opt-out.
timing.
Yeah, I know, it's very suspicious. So it's like, hang on,
Outrageous.
you've got all these people being euthanized. You've got all these reasonably healthy people, being euthanized. Are their organs being taken? I've heard some very, very weird stories from the people in my group. Several people have said that they had the really strong feeling that their loved one's body wasn't in the coffin, because as soon as they put these people down as dying of COVID, they wouldn't let the families see the bodies. They would they'll seal the coffins so nobody can actually, and who knows who or what was in the coffin. One person said that she noticed that the coffin was ridiculously heavy, so heavy they had to wheel it in on a trolley, whereas her loved one wasn't a heavy person. So it's like, and it's very strange because these people are talking from their gut feeling that there's something not right, that their loved one isn't in the coffin, that or it's the wrong person, or they don't know, but they've just got to read. I've never heard of stories like that prior to the last 4 years. Everyone just knows.
And of course, it's the kind of mistake that the criminal might make. They'll think, oh, we'll put this weight in so that people think. But unfortunately for them, the family know how much their relative weighed, and especially if they're very light, 6 stone or something like that. So
and
if
there's a massive push for cremation as well, because of the infectious aspect of the killer disease, so they were pushing for people to cremate as quickly as possible. And I've got a story about that as well, but obviously we haven't got time now. But so that prevented in the future the possibility of post-mortems. So that was they're getting rid of the evidence, basically.
Correct. Destruction of evidence. Preemptive destruction of evidence. So in other words, removing the possibility that somebody could get a post-mortem later. So I was giving lots of people advice that if any of their relatives died in 2020, they should not get the body cremated. But of course, the hospitals were working the other way and encouraging people to, coercing people into having their relatives cremated.
Not just the hospitals, but the courts. So I had people who actually managed to keep their loved ones' bodies for long periods of time. One person who was temporarily in my group managed to keep her mother's body for 2 years because she wanted an autopsy done. What a horrible thought! Your poor loved one is lying in a morgue somewhere, for 2 whole years, and then the courts get involved. And then in one person's case, they got her father, that she was keeping his body because she needed a post-mortem done because she believed he'd been drugged to death. And the courts eventually just said he has to be cremated, So when the courts get involved and they make these orders, it's just done whether you like it or not. And I've got a personal story about that as
well.
Why
did the body have to be cremated? I don't understand why that would be.
Because the court said so,
Yeah, but no reason given.
No. Just that there was nothing to see here. They were making a fuss about nothing. They didn't need a post-mortem. Go ahead with the cremation, and then it's out of the person's hands.
But why couldn't the family have a burial?
I don't know. But because they were pushing cremation. Because, like I said, they're trying to get rid of the evidence. They don't
destroy the evidence. Yeah, destruction of evidence.
Yeah, especially with the jabs and everything. If they discovered that obviously there are a few cases now where, starting with Lisa Shaw back in 2021, where they are admitting that the jabs have killed people directly, but they don't want too many of those, they just want a few so they can say, oh, it's a 1 in a million chance, but actually if they did post-mortems on more people, they would discover it's much, much higher ratio.
So Jackie, you don't know this, but I was taught at medical school by one of our professors. He said, you cannot practice medicine properly if you don't have post-mortem examinations. That's how important they were.
Yeah.
And somebody in the governments around the world knew this, and they built that into the system. So they took it away in the UK. I was outraged. There were no possibility to have post-mortem examinations in the UK because that was the route to getting justice in the future. But not only were post-mortem examinations got rid of in the UK, but also they were getting people to cremate the bodies, and nobody should ever get their relatives cremated because it destroys the evidence. So any anything that turns up in the future, you can't have a post-mortem examination.
Yeah, I mean, I was when my dad died, I wanted to have a post-mortem done. I wanted to keep the body. I was getting hassle from the family mainly saying, oh, because I'd booked the funeral and then they'd booked all their days off work and then they were up in arms saying you can't delay it. Anyway, I just got so much pressure. I just caved in the end because I was under a lot of stress anyway at the time, and just thought I'm going to have to use my energies in other areas, not on my dad, and. Yeah, and that's what I did. So, there's pressures from all different kinds of angles when you're in that situation.
Yeah, but it's possible to stand up to, because my mother's funeral took place 6.5 months after she died. Because I knew that I couldn't cope with that as well as the MOD whistleblowing case. So
yeah, my other story is the case of a friend, you might have heard of him, Wayne Smith, who'd done a lot of research into the whole euthanasia thing. He'd been on it since 2013 when his father was killed at home by a nurse, and he'd written books and everything. He was going to be in my documentary, but a month before I was about to meet up with him, he was found dead in his house in Chichester, and the police told me he died of COVID. Me and another doctor, Dr. Mark Jones, tried to stop the cremation. We said we needed it. He didn't have COVID. We'd spoken to him days before he died, and he was fine. And they wouldn't allow it. They said we weren't family. The guy didn't have any family, so we couldn't stop it, and they cremated him. All the evidence gone.
Oh, terrible. Yeah. So, Jacqui, thank you so much for talking to us. Please keep going. But surround yourself with allies, and it'll make the burden less, maybe.
Yeah, okay, I will. Thanks for the advice, and thanks
Do
for
what you can. I think you've got very good instincts.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah. So thank you very much for talking to us.